The dawn over Winterfell arrived in muted silver, thin winter light, sifting through a weave of low cloud that clung to the castle's broken ramparts. Snow still haunted the godswood in pale drifts, but the air carried a fragile promise of spring. A promise that stretched as keen and uncertain as Sansa Stark's newborn resolve. The heart tree's red leaves whispered to her as she stood before its face, listening to the quiet rush of the pool, recalling every oath once spoken here, then letting each of them fall away like shed skins. Ned's daughter, Catelyn's daughter, Queen in the North for an hour, Lady of Winterfell forever. Titles meant little when the world's balance trembled on a dragon's wing. She closed her eyes. In the hush she saw again the ember glow pulse, heard the thin chime of shell fracturing, smelled the heady salt and smoke scent that had spilled from the crate 2 moons past. She had watched it hatch by lantern light, alone in the crypts, beneath the gaze of thousands of dead Starks. The creature had been small then, all slick membranes, gasping ribs, and needle-thin claws. But the fire within it had been immense, as though a fallen star throbbed where its heart should beat. They had named the hatchling Viriditas, after the deep summer greening of the wolfswood. Though now, barely 10 weeks on, there was nothing small about him. His wings spanned half the courtyard when he stretched. Dark jade sails shot through with brass veins. Black horns spiraled from the back of his skull. And when he exhaled, the air rippled with the warmth of a smithy. Bran had told her once that dragons grew as large as the space they were given. Winterfell's bailey had become too small already, and the beast's restlessness was a storm coiled tight. But it was not restlessness alone driving Sansa's choice. Ravens arrived each morning, carrying tidings from the south that stank of dust and ash. Broken harvests near the Trident, mercenary banners massing beyond the Prince Pass, new taxes on northern grain passing down the King's Road. King Stannis, his crown brittle as old iron, sat uneasy on the Iron Throne with half a court that whispered, half that plotted, and only a fraction that believed. Old alliances frayed, new ones twisted like Grinwood in fire, and everywhere the small folk spoke of winter lingering too long. A single spark could set the realm ablaze. Sansa meant to be the one to shape that blaze, not merely endure it. Still, stepping upon a dragon's neck for the first time had unmade her composed mask. Viriditas had crouched, serpentine body lowering like a drawn bow. But the moment her gloved hand slid along the ridge of onyx scales, an answering shiver had raced through him. Sparks danced across his flanks, scattering snow in hissing puffs. Her knees quaked so violently she thought she might crumple, yet she held steady, fingers clamping the dorsal spikes until their cold edges bit. When he launched skyward, a vow tore free inside her. A wordless cry older than Winterfell stones. We rise together. Arya would have laughed at the prim lady's skirts whipping around her thighs, hair unraveling in the gale. Jon would have tilted his head in that solemn manner he wore when duty twisted against heart. But Arya was far across the narrow sea, chasing mercenary songs, and Jon was ash on the wind, memory of a memory. Sansa carried them both like runes carved upon her bones as Viriditas climbed the pale sky, his wing-beat sledge hammering the air. The flight southward spanned 8 days and 9 nights, tracing the King's Road snaking line but high enough that their passing cast only fleeting shadows on the caravans below. From that altitude, Sansa saw the realm like a quilt laid upon rough ground, rills of river silver, squares of tilled umber earth, tangled green forests that bled into gray foothills. She noted every burned holdfast, every village left roofless by last winter's storms, every refugee camp hugging the margins of a lord's domain. Viriditas' roar echoed across those sodden fields, and farmers looked up in awe or terror. It scarcely mattered which, for both were a kind of prayer. On the 3rd night they roosted beside the neck, atop the crumbling watchtower called Greywater Spite. There, under lantern glow, Sansa pored over parchment maps with Lord Howland Reed's son Galbart, who had brought fresh tidings from the twins. Walder Frey's grandsons were rallying sellswards, hoping to seize White Harbor now that Lord Manderley lay ill. Reed spoke softly of whispered deals between King Stannis and the Vale, of Lysa Arryn's sudden silence, of sell sails in Gulltown bearing purple lion banners. King's Landing festers, Galbart said, voice raw with windburn. The capital's coin bleeds north and east both. One good shove and the Lion's Gate crumbles. Sansa traced her finger along the map's inked avenue leading to the Red Keep. Not a shove, she murmured. A wing beat. They departed before dawn, the moat mist scattering like ghosts beneath them. By dusk of the 5th day, Dragonstow's ragged silhouette breasted the horizon. Black towers knife-edged against a scarlet sunset. Sansa circled the volcanic spires once, riding thermals that smelled of sulfur and salt. A single lantern burned atop the stone drum, Daenerys's old haunt, though the mother of dragons herself was long vanished west. In her place remained only ragtag officers loyal to the last queen, guarding fractured loyalty like dying embers. Sansa descended upon the courtyard with care, mindful of the memories this island held. The garrison greeted her not with spears but with cautious bows. They had heard rumor of a northern dragon, rumor now given flesh, jade-scaled and restless. She walked the corridors where Daenerys had once plotted her invasion, reading the faded murals of Valyrian kings astride beasts of fire. Each torchlit archway whispered a vow: conquer or crumble, soar or perish. In the council chamber, its great table carved as Westeros, she laid out her commission. She would fly to King's Landing under the direwolf banner. She would demand treaty, not tribute. She would seat Viriditas upon the dragon pit's shattered dome as symbol and threat alike. But first Dragonstone's men must hold the narrow sea's mouth, deny river passage to Frey or Lannister alike, and fly her colors from its battlements. The officers listened, measuring the steel beneath her courtesy. She offered them more than oaths: trade fleets from White Harbor once the Freys were cowed, northern timber to rebuild their battered docks, and freedom to choose their own commander once peace was won. In the glow of the obsidian hearth, they bent knee, some out of hope, some fear. Sansa accepted each with equal grace. Loyalty forged under duress still served, and time would temper it to something purer. They resupplied at Dragonstone: salt meat, dried cherries, thin leaf tea that tasted of smoke, while Viriditas explored the isle's ancient seaward caves, leaving scorched claw marks where molten veins seeped close to the surface. On the 6th dawn, he returned, streaked with volcanic ash, as though painted for war. Sansa stroked his brow ridges, feeling the furnace heat thrumming beneath scale. "Soon," she whispered, and he rumbled assent. 2 days of hard flight carried them along Blackwater Bay's jagged rim, salt gusts lashing Sansa's cheeks raw. By mid-morning on the 2nd, the walls of King's Landing rose from heat haze. Tawny stone shimmering, rooftops packed like scales upon a massive creature dozing in its own stink. She reined Viriditas into a wide spiral, letting city folk glimpse the emerald leviathan before trumpets or bells could raise alarm. Dockworkers froze, splashes of wine spilled upon the quays. Gold cloaks pointed skyward, mouths agape. Children clutched rag dolls and cheered or cried. Fear moved through the metropolis like wind through corn. Only when the bells began their panicked clang did Sansa angle for the wide plaza before the dragon pit, its broken dome gaping toward the heavens like the ribs of some slain titan. Viriditas plunged, pulled up in a thunder of wings, and alit amidst shattered marble. Dust swirled, pigeons shrieked away, and the sound of his talons ripping stone rang like distant drums. Sansa dismounted in a swirl of sable cloak stitched with running wolf silver. Behind her, the beast's shadow stretched across the plaza, reaching almost to the steps of the Hill of Rhaenys. The small council had fled the Red Keep before she reached its gates. Stannis' hand, old Sir Roland Storm, scuttled into Maegor's holdfast with a handful of gaunt maesters. But the city's commoners had followed the dragon's passage, flooding Rhaenys Hill until the crowd swayed shoulder to shoulder, a sea of upturned faces shining with fear and wonder. Sansa faced them first, raising gloved hands for silence. Her voice, honed by years of court politicking yet tempered by northern winters, carried across the hush. "I am Sansa Stark of House Stark, Lady of Winterfell." She began, "I come not as conqueror nor usurper, but as protector. The North has suffered under the weight of your wars. We seek alliance, bread for bread, sword for sword, dragonfire, only if dragonfire is offered us." A ripple of astonishment met the words. Southron tongues were unused to such naked candor. Then she spoke of grain shipments languishing at the Bight, because Freys had seized White Harbor's quays, of iron-born raiders emboldened by the crown's distraction, of Riverlanders trampled by sellsword boots, hired with Lannister gold. She told them King's Landing's coffers were bleached bone. Taxes could no longer feed the city, but northern harvests might. Markets could bustle again, so long as roads ran safe beneath banners of direwolf and crowned stag together. As she spoke, Viriditas coiled behind her like a living catapult, emerald eyes tracking every sudden motion in the crowd. When a throne stone arced toward Sansa's head, he snapped it from the air with fire-kissed teeth. Its fragments pattered to ground molten. Thereafter, the mob listened, silent, enthralled. By dusk, Lord Stannis Master-at-Arms, Sir Godry Farron, led a silent procession from the Red Keep to meet her beneath the blackened ribs of the dragon pit. He bore the king's seal, though not the king himself. Stannis, ever wary, watched from a rampart balcony, pinched face unreadable. Godry's first words were brittle. "His Grace recognizes no queen in the north, yet the realm bleeds. He will speak." Sansa inclined her head. "Then let him speak. I will wait upon the Red Keep steps beneath my own banner. But know this, should a trick be played, King's Landing will burn before night's end. Let him see." She did not shout the threat. She simply laid it down like shears upon silk. Behind her, Viriditas unfurled his wings, and the setting sun caught them, casting the plaza in a green-gold glow. Fear, awe, and the stirrings of desperate hope warred across Lord Godry's face. At last he bowed and turned. That night, Sansa slept within the maw of the dragon pit, using the curve of her dragon's folded foreleg as pillow. Fires burned and braziers ringed about them, yet none dared approach. She dreamed she stood on a shoreline of black glass as waves of molten gold lapped at her feet. A lone direwolf howled across the plain, and a colossal shadow wheeled overhead, wings beating time with her heart. When she woke, Viriditas' head lay beside hers, breath warm as summer noon, and the city's sunrise bells were ringing the hour of the maiden. Dawn's first light turned the Red Keep's walls to blood-slick bronze. Sansa mounted and rode the short skyward leap to the king's courtyard, descending before the great doors split by dragonfire centuries past. Lines of Baratheon guards flanked the way, their black and gold cloaks snapping in the thin breeze that precedes a storm. Stannis waited just beyond the doors, jaw clenched, crown glinting like dried blood. He studied her with eyes that had measured every false pledge ever offered him, and found nearly all wanting. "Lady Stark." His voice held flint's edge. "You arrive unbidden, breathing menace. I arrive invited by necessity." She replied, stripping lamb-white glove from her right hand and offering it. After a heartbeat, he accepted the clasp, his palm calloused and cold. They walked side by side beneath the high arches of the throne room, dragon wing shadows sliding over the patterned marble, as Viriditas stalked the roof outside, talons ticking upon slate. In the echoing vastness, Sansa felt every stride echo with the weight of those who had walked here before. Aegon, Aerys, Robert, Joffrey. Thrones change, she thought, but the hall remains, drinking each ambition, each sorrow, like rain into parched earth. They spoke long that morning, behind doors of weathered weirwood. Maesters pored over ledgers. Lords presented casualty lists. Merchants wept for seized caravans. Sansa laid out her plan. A joint campaign to secure the Riverlands, to drive the Freys back into their dank halls, to reopen the King's Road with Stark bannermen and Baratheon knights patrolling together. In return, the North would send south caravans heavy with oats, barley, cured fish, and timber. And should Lannister gold attempt sabotage, Viriditas would answer with flame. Stannis listened, brow furrowed deeper with each proposal. He questioned every wagon route, every harvest estimate, every projected levy for soldiers' pay, until sweat traced the maester's temples. Yet the numbers held. The North, spared the worst of war, had stores aplenty if spring came clean. The crown's vaults might be bare, but grain and safety were wealth of another kind, and the people would sing the name that fed them. At last, as candle smoke spun lazily above them, Stannis' frown broke like thaw ice. "You ride a dragon," he said, voice low as thunder at horizon. "Some will call that conquest, whatever words we speak." Sansa met his gaze. "Then let them. Legends are clay. We shape them by living." She paused. "I would rather shape them with bread than blood, but make no mistake. Winterfell does not yield." The king's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Robert once said the same of me." He rose, joints cracking like saplings in frost, and extended his gauntleted hand. "Alliance then. Direwolf and stag, and dragon. Formal, rigid, yet final." They sealed it with ink and scorching wax. As the seal hardened, distant thunder rolled. Viriditas announcing the covenant to sky and sea alike. In the courtyard below, common folk gathered, rumors already blossoming like wildfire. That the Lady of Winterfell had brought a verdant god-beast, that a new queen might sit the Iron Throne, that winter's bite would lessen under dragon warmth. Sansa stepped onto the balcony and met their upturned faces. She raised one hand. Viriditas roared overhead, a ribbon of emerald fire across the pale morning. Promise and warning braided together. That roar carried beyond the city walls, across the fields where sellswords drilled, through the stone corridors of discontent lords plotting treachery, and even into distant valleys where riverfolk knelt beside empty grain bins. It said the realm had shifted upon its axis. It said the North had come south, not in supplication, but in purpose. And high above, unseen save by crows and gods, storm clouds drew together, bruised dark and trembling with latent power. That evening, Sansa stood alone atop Maegor's holdfast, cloak snapping in the freshening wind. Fires glittered across King's Landing like scattered jewels. Harbor lanterns bobbed, the moon gleamed on Blackwater's inky sweep. She thought of Arya somewhere beyond the seas, of Bran drifting through weirwood dreams, of Joan's ashes mingling with snow. She thought of her mother's voice singing of summer wine beneath Wintertown's eaves. Each memory was a thread. Together they wove a banner she carried within her ribs, fluttering to the beat of her heart. Below, in the vaults where the Targaryens once chained their monsters, Viriditas roosted. She felt his presence as a warmth behind her sternum, an ember that would never extinguish. Tomorrow the work began. Proclamations to draft, grain caravans to dispatch, Frey incursions to quell. But tonight, for the length of a single candle, she allowed herself stillness. Wind caressed her cheeks, tasting of salt, smoke, and the thin sweetness of dawn not yet born. In that silence she whispered a new vow. Not to the old gods, nor the new, but to the realm itself, that it would know a peace forged in dragonfire's glow and tempered in the snows of the north, that the songs sung in years to come would name Stark alongside Targaryen, Direwolf alongside Dragon, and remember that when winter threatened to devour all, it was a woman who rode the storm and said simply, "No." Far out to sea, lightning stitched the horizon, silver needles in velvet cloth. Sansa watched the flash and felt no fear, for in her veins ran the quiet strength of Winterfell and the terrible grace of dragons. And between those two fires, even the darkest storm must one day shatter. She turned from the parapet, steps echoing on cold stone, and descended into the castle that was, by right of pact and flame, hers to guard. Behind her, the dragon's distant rumble rolled through the city's bones like thunder heralding dawn. Yeah. Hey. The ink had scarcely dried on Sansa's covenant, when the soft rot beneath King's Landing began to bleed through gilt facades. Cobblers and bakers, chandlers and fishmongers, each sent furtive petitions to Maegor's holdfast, begging bread or safety or both. For the price of onions had tripled overnight, and rumors whispered that a gilded lion meant to retake the city by siege. Sansa rose before first light each day, hair coiled in a simple northern braid, and walked the capital's warrens with Lord Davos at her side. They moved without banners, cloaks drawn, listening. Davos' good hand sketched notes. A district where wells had gone foul, a tenement collapsing from spring rains, a baker flogged for hoarding crusts. Sansa spoke little, but her eyes, a frost-bright gray, saw everything. Viriditas circled above in lazy gyres, living sigil of her promise, yet she did not rely on dragon fear alone. Grain ships from White Harbor now slipped past the sisters on oars of dawnlight, escorted by Baratheon galleys, whose black stag sails snapped like thunderheads. Each vessel carried barrels stamped with the direwolf. Each dockside cart rolled east and west under bartered stag guards. Stannis grumbled over every denier spent, yet he signed the writs. Coins return, she told him, but loyalty earned through hunger's easing outlives any treasury. On the 12th morning after her arrival, a raven from the twins arrived, sputtering the old Frey bluster. Threats of retribution for northern insolence, and demands that the crown repudiate Winterfell's pact. Sansa read the letter aloud to the small council. When she reached the line promising 1,000 sellsword pikes to decorate Winterfell's halls with northern heads, Sir Axel Florent scoffed that the Freys would never march so far from their weeping bridge. Sansa said nothing. Instead, she pricked her thumb and pressed blood beside the Frey seal. "This insult," she said, voice as level as a knife's spine, "is a debt. The North pays its own, with interest." Stannis, jaw set, ordered the Frey emissary thrown from the city gates with empty saddlebags so he might carry home the poverty of his threats. That eve, she ascended the ramparts to stand beside Stannis as evening wind off Blackwater Bay rattled the torches. Ships' lanterns dotted the waves. Far away thunder boomed where storm clouds huddled. They spoke little, for words between them had grown economical. But the silence held weight of its own, a treaty not of parchment but of presence. When she withdrew, Stannis lingered, watching the dragon wheel above like an ember among the stars. And in the Riverlands, the war truly began. Sir Brynden Tully rallied disenfranchised lords beneath the direwolf stag banner, coaxing Mallisters and Blackwoods with promises of reopened trade and vengeance, measured in good steel. The ravens were swift. Lady Sansa to Blackfish, Blackfish to Hornwood outriders, outriders to Mander fortresses. By the second new moon, a northern host of 6,000 spears crossed the neck under Lord Serwyn's command. They bore casks of fish and grain as well as axes. Wherever they set camp, hungry smallfolk found stew bubbling on communal fires. Word of such generosity galloped ahead of the column, and for each mile they marched 3 men joined them. Farmhands with homemade pikes, hedge knights with patched surcoats, even priests of the 7 brandishing rusted maces. One crisp dawn near Oldstones, Serwyn's outriders discovered Frey sellswords bivouacked in the ruins, tents strung between mossy foundations of dead kings. Drizzle clung to grass. Mist blurred the shapes of half-armored men nursing sour ale. Serwyn surveyed the field from a low ridge and sent a raven south. Battle soon. Pray send blessing of dragon. The raven reached King's Landing by dusk. Sansa read the terse lines beside the brazier, heart hammering not with dread but a fierce, clear resolve. She donned boiled leather riding breeches, plain gray surcoat, and called for Viriditas at the dragon pit. The beast came willingly, as always, bowing the ridge of his neck so she could grip the spines. Sir Godry Farron tried to follow with a flight of knights, but she waved him off. "Armies may follow on hoof," she said, "yet wind favors wings." Viriditas leapt, a catapult of emerald muscle, and the knights swallowed them. They crossed moonlit plains in hours that men on horseback would spend in days. Sansa rode low along the neck ridge, cheeks burning with cold cloak whipping. When dawn bled across the horizon, they beheld the trident's pale coils, and to the west, the glint of mail as 2 armies aligned like silver combs. Serwyn's spears bristled in tight shield wall along a ridge crowned by bare birch. Below, the Frey host sprawled across marshy flats, blue banners soggy with dew. Crude catapults groaned. flinging stones that thumped harmlessly into the slope. Sansa smelled fear sharp as iron. She signaled her presence with one ringing cry. Viriditas answered with fire. A curtain of jade-white flame sheeted across the Frey rear flank, boiling mud to glass. Horses screamed, men threw down pikes, and the line wavered. Serwyn's horn bellowed. Northern spears surged. The battle, if such it could be called, concluded before the sun lifted fully. Only charred stumps of tents and the high wail of Frey banners burning remained. Among the prisoners was Sir Ryman Frey's sharp-tongued bastard, Carlan Dotto. Serwyn dragged him before Sansa amid trampled reeds. Carlan spat mud and curses. "Dragon whore," he barked. "Your pretty beast won't always be near." Sansa crouched, meeting his bloodshot eyes. "True," she conceded. "But Winterfell is a pack, not a lone wolf." She offered him terms. Bend knee to the new alliance, swear his house to supply river grain at fair price, and be released under guard to spread word of the mercy. Carlan chose defiance, spitting again. She nodded once. Serwyn drew steel. That justice, swift and hard, traveled on the tongues of every Riverlander who watched. Within a fortnight, 3 more minor Frey branches betrayed Walder's cause and opened their gates to Tully envoys. In King's Landing, victory bred peril. The small folk lauded Sansa as Lady of Mercy. Hawkers sold wooden tokens carved into dire wolves with dragon wings, and septons wove her into sermons as the red-hued maiden astride the green flame. Stannis Bannerman muttered of cults. The court vultures worried that adoration might tilt into rebellion. It was not jealousy that troubled Stannis but order. Births of heroes sparked unrest as surely as tyrants. He requested an audience, one chilly dusk. They met in the Lord Commander's solar atop the Red Keep. Coals glimmered. A half-eaten bowl of onion soup cooled between them. "The city loves you," Stannis said. "Love is fickle. Fear steadies a crown." Sansa stirred the broth. "So does bread." He grunted. "Bread spoils. Then we shall bake more." Back and forth they sparred in low voices, 2 flints striking. At last Stannis rubbed a scar across his beard. "Your measures may save them," he admitted. "But remember, they owe me allegiance, not you." His eyes reflected firelight. Stern, weary, honest. Sansa inclined her head. "And I owe them safety. Let us balance the scales together." Then, that night, she walked alone along the gallery of the Kingsguard statues, ghosts of white cloaks carved in marble. She paused before the likeness of Brienne, newly raised after the last war, sword held point downward in perpetual vigil. Sansa laid fingers against the stone gauntlet, remembering the brave woman who once swore to return her safely home. "I am home," she murmured. "Now I make the home safe." She felt Viriditas stir in distant sleep, a lantern heat flickering through her chest. And no, spring advanced on silent feet. Bud green fledged the city's maimed trees, and the smell of fresh bread drifted from market stalls. Sansa's measures took root. Orphan wards fed in sept cellars. Leal blacksmiths granted northern iron to replace shattered rivets on the city gates. Midwives escorted under stag-wolf guards into plague-scarred neighborhoods. Not all welcomed interference. The faith militant, resentful of a woman wielding dragon power, whispered that she was a second Maegor. Septon Scholera preached fire and salt sermons from the starry Sept's porch, calling her the Scarlet Temptress come to melt the 7 into one heathen god. Sansa answered by inviting him to dine. She seated the Septon beside hungry small folk, served him thick stew ladled from the same pot, and listened politely while he proclaimed doom. When the meal ended, the Septon lingered, cheeks crimson with shame or wine, and later tempered his tirades to mere cautionary musings. More dangerous than sermons were whispers of golden lions gathering at Casterly Rock. Jaime Lannister, freed of his sister's shadow but not his father's pride, marshaled cell sails along the Shield Islands. Ravens reported 70 ships under red and gold sails, moving east. Demio. Stannis wished to meet them with his royal fleet. Sansa urged delay until Manderley's grain convoys cleared the narrow sea. Words frayed into argument. Tempers flared like struck flint. In council she remained unbowed. In private she paced ramparts, tasting the bitter tang of looming war. On a dew-soaked morning a ship bearing the mermen of White Harbor limped into Blackwater. Sails scorched. The captain staggered ashore with arrowheads in his thigh and word that Lannister corsairs had struck north of Massey's Hook. 2 grain boats sank. A third was taken. Sansa stood at the quayside, cloak fluttering, as dockhands offloaded blood-spattered barrels. Wheat grains scattered across planks like spilled gold. She knelt, scooped a handful, and let them fall between her gloved fingers. Enough, she said. That night she convened council on Dragonstone, not in the Red Keep, away from lords' prying ears. Around Dragonstone's carved map table, her finger traced the Lion Fleet's probable arc. Stannis watched, Davos listening. "We strike at night," she proposed. Dragonfire to break their center, Stormwind to scatter what remains. Then Baratheon galleys clean the carrion. Stannis frowned. Risky. Dragon alone cannot hold the sea. Sansa met his gaze. Dragonfire is thunder. Thunder promises rain. Fleets scatter at rain's threat. Davos murmured assent. Sailors were notoriously fearful of the old Valyrian magic. Reluctantly, Stannis agreed. They sailed upon the new moon. The royal flagship Fury led 5 war galleys, lanterns hooded until they bobbed within sight of the Shield Islands. Viriditas, restless in the Dragonstone caverns, sensed his riders' call before dawn and launched into a star-shot sky. Sansa met Stannis upon Fury's deck as cool brine misted their brows. He offered a wineskin dipped in salt water for luck. She sipped, tasting iron and depth. "Should I fall?" she warned. "Vidar Mormont commands the North Host. Do not forsake him." Stannis grunted. "If you fall, I shall have already lost a realm." Then the lion sails appeared, row upon row like blood-streaked teeth against a slate horizon. Trumpets blared. Rangy octrine horns answered. Sansa vaulted the rail, riding wind threads toward Viriditas as he arrowed from Cloudshroud. The air tore around her. Then dragon and rider fused again, the world shrinking into pulse and wingbeat. They dove. Emerald flame ripped the night in 2 eye. A Lannister Drummond erupted like a torchlit blossom, its mast pinwheeled, hurling flaming spars across adjacent decks. Sailors flung themselves overboard, armor dragging them to red-lit deep. Panic spread bow to stern. Some captains tried turning broadside to bring catapults to bear, but the beast was too swift. Each pass shattered discipline. Then Fury's drums thundered. Baratheon galleys surged, ramming wounded hulls. Fire met steel. Steel met salt. Hours bled away in smoke. At dawn, smoldering hulks freckled the swell. Sansa hovered above, hair matted to her face with sea spray and soot. Viriditas' flanks heaved, but his eyes gleamed. Beneath, knights hauled survivors aboard, shackling captains for ransom. Jaime Lannister was not among them. Rumor later claimed he'd sailed on the Vanguard and escaped beyond the Stepstones. If true, Sansa thought, he would carry home tales of green death from the clouds. Fear would prove a clever envoy. And now, victory could not temper all storms. In the capital, factions sharpened blades in silence. The Tyrells, still licking wounds from their last defeat, courted disgruntled merchants proud of gold cloaks, dismissed under Sansa's reforms. The city watch, ever a weather vane to coin, began to mutter. Lord Petter Baelish's lingering spies rekindled old debts. Coin-greased rusted hinges of betrayal. 1 humid night dogs howled in the alleys, and 6 conspirators met in the vault beneath a shuttered inn. A watch captain, 2 spice traders, a goldsmith, a faith scribe, and Sir Jarek Wilde, last of the rebellious former king's bastards. They plotted to poison the grain bins, blame the northern shepherds, then incite riot. From riot, they argued, would spring a plea for strong Lannister or Tyrell rule. Yet the quiet streets had new eyes. Arya's old network, inherited by a handful of orphans loyal to Lady Bird, now served her sister's cause. Their smallest urchin, nicknamed Weaver, followed Wild's bootprints that night. Before dawn, Weaver slipped into the dragon pit stable and planted the news under Sansa's saddle blanket. A crumpled rag, drawn with a crude lion gnawing a sack of wheat. Sansa found it before sunrise prayers and understood at once. She summoned Davos, then Stannis. "Let us cut rot at its root," she said. They staged no spectacle. Gold cloaks, loyal to Davos, quietly relieved the suspect captain. Baratheon knights, in plain cloaks, escorted the traitors from their counting houses. In the darkness before dawn, the conspirators were brought to the Red Keep's old dungeons, cells once haunted by rats, fattened on Targaryen secrets. Sansa herself questioned them, voice soft but unyielding. With every revelation, another knot in the city's web was traced and undone. By dawn, 30 names were inked upon a list that Davos carried to Stannis. Some were spared, ignorant pawns. Others were condemned, willing vipers. Justice came at sunrise, quick as a sword's flash. Word spread that mercy walked hand in hand with vengeance. The city's murmurs settled like dust. And now, beyond the Wall of Ash, the informal name King's Landing Smallfolk now gave the line of dragon-scorched fields. Summer finally kissed the north. Bran's ravens spoke of snowmelt lakes glittering across the Dreadfort Downs, deery wolves birthing healthy litters, and children playing among bluebells in Winter Town. Yet Sansa barely tasted the glad tidings. Paper war consumed her. New levies for road wardens, charter drafts for free clinics, correspondence with Braavosi bankers regarding grain futures. She wrote by candlelight until her fingers cramped, but each scratch of quill sounded like a hammer forging the realm she envisioned. Late one evening, as cressets guttered low, a tremor rumbled through the keep that was not wind nor storm. Sansa felt it in her spine. A call. Urgent. She pushed from her desk, quill clattering, and hurried to the courtyard, where Viriditas often roosted upon the warming stones. She found the dragon restless, wings half-mantled, eyes whirling glyphed bronze. He hissed, nostrils flaring with sparks, head turning toward the east. Flames licked his jaws, but he did not loose them. She laid a calming palm upon his shoulder ridge and followed his stare. Above Blackwater's expanse glimmered an unfamiliar comet, pale green like drowned glass. It pulsed faintly, tail pointing east over the narrow sea. Astrologers would later name it the Serpent's Eye. Maesters on Dragonstone, studying old Valyrian scrolls, whispered that such comets heralded dragon spawn stirring in slumbering clutches. Sansa watched the eerie light shiver across Viriditas' scales and wondered if somewhere beyond the world's rim another egg cracked open, loosing wings upon unsuspecting skies. The omen unsettled the court. Some hailed it as proof the gods blessed their alliance. Others feared rival dragon lords rising far away. Sansa sought counsel from Bran through raven dreams. His response arrived in cryptic verse. When skies burn green, threads converge. Out of ash. New song. Guard the loom. She mulled the words for days as if they were puzzle keys. Guard the loom. Did he mean the realm? The alliances? Or simpler, still, the fragile peace? Peace never stands alone. While carpenters repaired the dragon pit's crumbled gate, rumors of Greyjoy raids up the western coast multiplied. Stannis dispatched galleys. Sansa sent ravens urging northern jarls to hold their own sons in check, or be named turncloaks. More troubling were tidings from the Vale. Lysa Arryn had died, off a chill, and young Robin's guardians now petitioned the crown to reaffirm his lordship. Stannis wished to send a crown emissary. Sansa requested to go herself. Citing her mother's kinship and her long exile there, Stannis, wary of absent allies, refused. Their quarrel echoed through heated corridors. "You are needed here," he insisted, fists clenched. "Dragons do not nest on every peak." She countered, "Every peak longs for a vantage. The Vale slopes toward us if handled with care." In the end, Davos proposed compromise. A joint embassy led by Lady Sansa, but escorted by Lord Davos, while Stannis remained guardian of King's Landing. The plan appeased caution and ambition, both. Before departure, she walked the silent yard where Viriditas dozed in midday warmth, scales glittering beneath curtains of wisteria. She knelt, pressing her brow to his. "I must travel where you cannot," she explained. "The Erie's winds would slice even your wings." The dragon rumbled, warm breath stirring her hair. She did not know if he understood words, but he felt intention, and intention bound them. She rose, stroking the ridge once more, and left him in the company of 3 young stable hands who adored oiling his scales. As she passed under the arch, he loosed a questioning croon that lingered behind her like a child's half-spoken farewell. The road northeast climbed through weeping willows and orchards heavy with early apricots. Sansa rode beside Davos, followed by 24 stagwolf guards and a baggage train bearing gifts. Smoked hams, Dornish lemons, bolts of Winterfell wool shot through with sylvan green thread. Davos told stories to lighten the march, tales of Storm's End and a smuggler's narrow escapes. She laughed softly, remembering times when she had thought laughter another person's privilege. At Harrenhal they paused, invited by Lady Shella went to sup beneath the melted towers. Harrenhal's ghosts supposedly stirred restlessly after Dragonflame. Yet Viriditas' conquest overshadowed even Balerion's old terror, and the castle's halls rang louder with songs of the Emerald Worm than with memories of black dread. Lady Went toasted the green dawn, predicting the realm would pass from Age of Iron to Age of Jade. Sansa declined such prophecy but smiled politely. Her eyes scanned shadows for hidden daggers. Harrenhal never lacked them. The Eyrie awaited like a crown carved from cloud. Sansa's party scaled the mountain passes while shaggy mountain clansmen watched from crags, curious but cautious. At the first sky castle, Stone, she relinquished her horse to sturdy mules. At Snow, she exchanged mules for rope lifts. Upward they climbed until lungs burned and winter bit once more. When the final winch deposited her upon the moon door's threshold, the air shimmered with frost diamonds. She stepped onto the Erie's moonlit parapet, memory flooding of dark nights weaving Arya ghost stories to comfort her younger self. Now she returned yet, not as ward nor supplicant, but envoy wielding Dragonfire's echo. Inside the high hall, young Lord Robin Arryn perched on the high-backed weirwood chair, legs swinging. By his side stood Ser Vardis Egan's successor, a dour knight named Sir Harlow Tollett. And behind them, the stern maester Coleman. Letters had warned that the Vale's Lords Declarant circled like hawks, eager for influence. Sansa approached with measured gait, cloak of white-gray wool swirling round her ankles. She bowed shallow. "Lord Robin," she greeted. "The North and Crown send warm felicitation and our sorrow for your mother's passing." Robin blinked large eyes. "Did you bring a dragon?" he piped. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Sansa smiled. "My friend cannot perch upon these peaks, my lord, but he guards King's Landing, awaiting my safe return." The boy clapped tiny hands. "When can I ride him?" Sir Harlow cleared his throat, glacial. "His lordship jests. The Vale thanks her ladyship's condolence." Formalities traded, they withdrew to parley chambers, adorned with falcon tapestries. Sansa laid out her offer. Vale grain stored during last winter traded south for northern fish and Baratheon armaments, mutual defense against ironborn raiders, and importantly, a betrothal, Robin Arryn to Lyanna Mormont once they came of age, binding mountain and island houses to the Wolfstag realm. Lords expressed alarm. Lyanna was a wild cub of a girl, Robin frail. Sansa countered that strength and gentleness tempered each other, a lesson the realm sorely needed. While the lords argued, Robin sipped honey milk and asked Sansa to recount the Battle of the Blackwater. She obliged, weaving Davos' bravery into a tale that left the boy wide-eyed. Negotiations stretched 3 days. On the second dawn, Sir Lyn Corbray arrived bearing a Tyrell letter promising the Vale unfettered autonomy if it withheld allegiance from the upstart Northern Queen. Sansa folded the scroll, placed it into the hearth flame, and watched green ink curl into smoke. To Corbray she said simply, "I offer no autonomy, only partnership. And in partnership lies greater freedom than isolation ever grants." By dusk, the majority of declarant lords leaned her way, enticed by secure trade in lean times and dragon-shielded skies over their mountain passes. The treaty signed, she descended with lighter heart. Yet an undercurrent of dread remained, a sense of threads tangling unseen. On the lower slopes, Davos handed her a fresh raven note. "Lion moves. Red Mountains. Beware Kingsroad." The cipher was Bran's. Sansa studied the hills scarred by snowmelt gullies, and knew Lannister retaliation brewed. She ordered half her guard to scout ridges ahead, while she and Davos pushed toward the Kingsroad Valley. Night deepened, stars blotted by heavy cloud. They made camp in scrub pine, fire gutted low to avoid detection. Davos took first watch. Sansa dozed, dagger under pillow. Dreams came brittle, green comet tails curling into fanged maws, viriditas beating against unseen chains while the world shook like a snared rabbit. She woke to wind-swept silence broken only by fire crackle. Davos nodded from his log seat. All quiet. Yet the quiet pressed too hard upon her ears. She rose, scanning darkness. Pine silhouettes swayed. Her skin prickled. An arrow thudded into the log where Davos sat. A second hissed past her cheek. Shouts erupted. Steel rang. From Ravine's lip poured shadow figures, half-armored, some bearing lion sigils hastily blacked out. Ambush. Sansa snatched her dagger even as Davos upended the cookpot, scattering sparks into assailants' eyes. Guard slung crossbow, bolt clanged on helm. Chaos. Sansa ducked a swinging mace, rolled beneath a horse's frantic hooves, and rose amid brush. She needed vantage, signaling flares, anything. Then she heard it, a distant roar, low but rising. Viriditas. Impossible. He was leagues away. Yet the roar swelled to a thunderous bellow that shook pine needles like rain. The attackers' faces blanched. Several broke ranks, fleeing upslope. Wind gusted, trees bent, and over the ridge hurtled not Viriditas but another dragon. Pale as moonstone, wings stitched with scarlet veins. Upon its neck clung a rider in tattered cloak, flame-fountained, blue-white, spearing the darkness. Raiders screamed, armor sagged as wax. Panic scattered them like leaves in gale. The strange beast landed heavy near the dying fire, tail lashing. Sansa stared, lungs frozen, as the rider slid down. Tall, wiry, face hidden behind soot-smeared linen. He pushed back the cowl. Sand-stung blue eyes, tangled dark curls, burn scar across the jaw. A voice rasped. "No need to thank me, little bird." Sansa staggered. "Sandor?" The hound grinned, wolfish. "Seems you traded songs for scales." She could not frame reply before Davos hurried forward, sword half raised. Sansa waved him down. Friend." She said. They shared a frantic embrace of half-true relief and unspoken memories. Sandor explained in broken phrases. He had fled across the narrow sea after the wars, taken work guarding Korth caravans, eventually apprenticing to a dragon warden in Volantis, who bred a pale clutch from smuggled eggs. When word of the Green Worm reached Essos taverns, Sandor figured Westeros could use a second scorched fiend. He named his mount Ghost Flame, though he admitted, naming beasts is folly. Nevertheless, he brought Ghost Flame across storm tides following the Green Comet. Sansa listened, wonder battling dread. 2 dragons changed the realm's game entirely. Double war power, but double threat of uncontrollable legend. Davos voiced practical worry. "How do we feed them both?" Sandor shrugged. "Goats, cows, Lannister men." Sansa managed a tired laugh. They broke camp before dawn. With 2 dragons overhead, raiders gave wide berth. The party reached the King's Road intact. On final lead to the city, small folk spilled into ditches to watch the twin terrors pass. 1 emerald, 1 ghost pale, and already minstrels birthed verses. Fire and fear, the maiden's spear. Sansa felt prophecy's weight knitting around her like chains. Yet she also sensed the loom Bran had warned of. Shuttles clacking faster as new threads slid across warp and weft. In the capital, Viriditas greeted Ghostflame with an echoing shriek that rattled stone. The dragons wheeled above the black water like twin moons battling for reflection. The city roared approval, or terror, indistinguishable at that volume. Stannis emerged onto the ramparts pale with fury or awe. Sandor bowed, mocking, but Sansa interposed. Another ally. She could see calculation behind Stannis' eyes. 2 dragons could swing any siege, but 2 dragons also doubled risk of revolt. Reluctantly, he welcomed the newcomer to court, though he forbade Sandor from speaking within 10 paces of the Iron Throne. Sandor grunted, better distance than licking gold chairs. With twin wyverns warding sky, the realm's enemies turned to subtler blades. One sullen dusk Sansa returned from grain silos to find her chambers ransacked. Papers strewn, wardrobe gutted, windows unlatched. Nothing appeared stolen, yet message was clear. Vulnerability. She summoned Davos and Sandor. Both scoured halls, found footprint traces. Light, perhaps a child's, leading to a servant passage. Sansa ordered the castle searched. That night they discovered a boy chimney sweep, hiding among oubliettes, fingers ink-smudged from copying scrolls. Under gentle coaxing he confessed a name. Varys. The spider rumor resurrected, but Varys was lost across seas, wasn't he? Wheels within wheels. Sansa increased ward rotations, instituted ciphered drafts, and began sleeping in alternating chambers. Yet, she refused to be cowed. Indeed, the invasion of privacy steeled her. Sharpening each resolve, she drafted decrees establishing a citywide grain reserve committee with equal seats for septus, merchants, and smallfolk spokesmen. So every hand touches the loaf, she reasoned. She arranged for the Silent Sisters to tend mass graves still unblessed since Cersei's reign. She commissioned storytellers to recite neutral histories in public squares, weaving North and South glories together, so children might grow hearing both. Opposition sputtered, weary of twin dragons and united throne. Tyrell envoys arrived bearing milk-sweet apologies and wagons of arbor wine. Sansa accepted graciously, but taxed each cask for orphan relief. Dorne sent sandsteeds, splendid but venom-tempered. She gifted them to mountain clans loyal to the Vale. Slowly, rivets of the new alliance tightened. Yet there remained one debt uncollected. Walder Frey's insult and the long shadow of the Red Wedding. With Riverlands nearly pacified, Sansa convened war council. Blackfish proposed storming the twins under cover of dragonfire. Stannis argued siege to starve them out. Davos preferred diplomacy spiked by threat. Sansa listened, weighing each. Let the old man live, she said finally. But strip his bridge. Confusion flickered. We tear down the twins, Davos asked. We tear down its cruelty. The crossing should belong to all free folk, not one treacherous lord. Her plan. Build punctures along the walls, open toll gates. Install neutral Riverlanders overseen by Tully and Manderly stewards. Frey's name would linger only in songs of warning. When the host marched, both dragons took wing. Walder Frey, gaunt and spite-thick, shuffled onto his parapet to watch the green and white nightmares descend. He collapsed into a trembling chair and offered fealty without a sword drawn. Sansa was not present. She remained in King's Landing, trusting deputies. But her proclamation arrived tied in white linen. Henceforth this crossing shall be known as River Run Span, open to realm at cost of a single copper. Let no oath be broken here again. Frey's sons gnashed teeth, but faced with dragons coiling above pontoon towers, they hammered their own sigils from gate timbers. The direwolf stag banners rose. Small folk celebrated, Minstrels composed ballads of the bridgeless lord. Trade flowed freer. But Sansa marked each cheer against ledger of repercussions. Pride wounded bleeds vengeance. She expected daggers in dark corners. Thus the shadow net widened, Arya's orphans listening at inn thresholds. Davos sea snakes tracing bribery, Bran's ravens watching roads. Still, threads knotted, unpredictable. And summer's first true heat wave settled over the capital. Stagnant air reeking of fish and horse dung. Dragons panted atop baked tiles, their scales dulled to matte. Sansa commanded cisterns hauled to dragon pit courtyards, letting beasts wallow. Ghost flames splashed like a child. Viriditas snorted, disgruntled yet grateful. The sight drew crowds peering from distant colonnades. Children shouted wagers, on which dragon could toss higher plumes of scalding water. In this humid lull, a courier from Braavos arrived, dressed in sisal. He presented a chest containing a single rolled parchment. No sigil. Sansa broke the wax. Three-eyed raven imprinted. Bran's hand, loom strains. Threads fray west. Guard the edge where sea meets storm. Cryptic as ever. She traced the letters. Heart quickening. West. Casterly. Iron Islands. Old Town. Storm. War or natural? She carried the message to Stannis. Stannis read twice, expression tightening. Old Town, he concluded. High towers guard citadels' lore. Lions court them. He proposed immediate envoy. Sansa argued for measured approach. While they debated, ravens arrived confirming Ironborn raids on Arbor wine fleets. Old Town's lifeline. Decision crystallized like frost. If Old Town fell to Iron Raiders allied with lions, the Reach might revolt, starving King's Landing. Stannis would muster fleet again. Sansa would ride southward via Roserad to secure Hightower loyalty firsthand. Dragons would divide, Viriditas with her, Ghost Flame with Stannis to see. Sandor protested. Splitting the beasts invited disaster. Sansa countered that disaster already knocked. Davos volunteered to see as well, leaving her light on advisors, but trusting. That night Sansa prayed in the God's Wood transplanted years prior into Maegor's courtyards. A stunted weir sapling whose red leaves brushed stone. She asked for courage, clarity, and the humility to know when dragonfire must yield to kinder flames. And now, the ride south unfurled like a fever dream of color. Fields of poppies rippling crimson, hedgerows bursting with lavender, children waving cloth of gold. Yet behind the beauty lurked fear, villages deserted near the Mander's mouth, barn doors splintered, nets empty. Ironborn longships, sleek as eels, had slipped upriver to burn stockpiles. Sansa's party accelerated, outriders pressing ahead to warn Hightower. Viriditas patrolled overhead, a verdant standard unmarred. 3 leagues north of Old Town, smoke columns marred the sky. They discovered a hamlet, Beach Haven, still smoldering, thatch roofs collapsed into blackened timbers. Survivors huddled in chapel ruins, eyes glazed. Sansa dismounted, knelt among them, offered water. A gray-haired woman grasped her wrist and whispered. Winged shadows, men shaped like sea demons. They carried babes to boats. Rage ignited within Sansa like quicklime. She mounted and urged Viriditas skyward. Scanning the meandering river. Below, longship wakes scarred the water, sails bearing kraken sigils beneath hasty white banners. Irregular raiders, not Balon's official fleet. Still deadly. She signaled her guard to follow along the bank while she harried from above. Viriditas dove. Flame-lanced water, raising steam clouds. Decks cracked, masts toppled. Raiders leaped overboard. Spears useless against living wildfire. Sansa spared those who dropped weapons and hauled captives onto banks, but any who raised bow at the sky met fire's judgment. The freed prisoners wept, bending to kiss her boots until she bade them rise. Approaching Old Town, bells tolled relief. Hightower's white beacons lit, signaling open gates. Lord Lytton Hightower, pale beard billowing, greeted them atop the harbor lighthouse. Beside him stood Lady Melora, famed for studying the higher mysteries. Sansa presented her charter, protection in exchange for Citadel scholarship, healers, builders, archivists to aid the realm reborn. Melora smiled, eyes alight. Knowledge longs to fly, she said, perhaps upon dragon wings. Lytton agreed to send healing sisters to King's Landing and store grain for joint distribution. In return, Sansa promised an escort of Baratheon Hightower galleys to patrol the Mander, bolstered by dragonfire deterrents. Celebrations unfurled through Old Town's streets. Lanterns shaped like dragons bobbed on river currents. And sept bells pealed a new hymn, weaving direwolf howls into traditional canter. Sansa spent nights in the Hightower's topmost library poring over Valyrian texts, Melora guiding her through glyphs describing Dragonbond, the psychic weave tying rider and beast. One passage chilled her. Should bonds sunder by death or betrayal, the worm may rage unbridled. She thought of Bran's loom, of Thread's fraying, and vowed never to break faith with Viriditus, or with the realm she swore to guard. During a dawn stroll along the harbor wall, she glimpsed a lone ship limping under shredded sail. Fury's banner half-torn. Davos leaned against the rail, face soaked in grief. Ghost flames circled overhead, riderless. Her breath caught. "Sandor," she called as the ship docked. Davos shook his head, jaw tight. Gone. Storm's wrath and ballista bolts. He drew their fire so we could board the flagship, drowned before Dragon could reach him. Ghost flame landed ashore, keening high lament that rattled glass panes. Pain lanced Sansa's chest. She knelt before the pale dragon, pressing forehead to his. The beast's eyes churned like storm-tossed ice. Wings drooping, she murmured a promise. His rider's sacrifice would shape victory, not sorrow. She swore Sandor's memory would stand in the new realm stones. Ghost flame recoiled but did not burn her. Instead he folded wings around her like snowfall. Stannis' fleet had triumphed, sinking the Iron Fleet's core, yet price tallied beyond coin. Davos recounted how Sandor plunged ghost flame among mastheads, drawing ballistae, until a lucky bolt pierced the saddle girth. Sandor had fallen into black churn. Ghost flame swept sea thrice but found no body. The dragon's mourning thundered until men feared hulls might split. Sansa stood atop the lighthouse that twilight, wind ripping hair loose. She balanced grief against purpose, letting tears trace ash lines on her cheeks. Threads converge, Bran had written. One thread ended in the sea, yet his sacrifice wove strength into the tapestry. She summoned Old Town scribes, penned edicts, the Hound's Bridge to span the Mander, free passage for orphans bearing his sigil, annual tourney awarding the Sandor Cup to champion of common birth, deeds to echo his gruff kindness. When the city's bells tolled Sandor's passing, even maesters bowed heads. Ghostflame remained atop the lighthouse, watching stars. Viriditus landed beside him, pressing snout to pallid neck. Between them a hush settled, a covenant of flame and frost. And oh, Sansa departed Old Town with twin dragons roosting on twin towers. They would guard the harbor a while, symbol of alliance, while she hastened northward. On the Roserwad she drafted letters by wagon lantern, to Stannis reporting success and loss, to Bran seeking counsel on twin bonds, to Arya, wherever wind might carry, begging her quick return. As wheels turned, Sansa envisioned the realm evolving, grain flowing, bridges free, knowledge shared, songs rising that honored not one banner but many. She knew darkness prowled still, Lannisters regrouping, Tyrell ambitions, Ironborn pride, but daylight broadened with every league. At night she dreamed of a loom whose threads now glimmered jade and silver, crimson and ivory, weaving patterns no single hand controlled. She would guard that loom, as Bran bid, with bread and dragonfire alike. And so the 5-hour tale unspooled toward its next act. A realm reshaped by a northern maiden who rode south on wings of living emerald. A stag-crowned king learning to temper iron with mercy. And a tapestry of alliances forged in ash, seawater, blood and newborn hope. A hope bright enough, perhaps, to rival the strange pale comet still burning across Westeros night skies. Ka. The caravan crawled northward beneath a molten sky, each day's heat leaching colors from the landscape until hedgerows dulled to washed linen and river shallows, glimmered like hammered bronze. Creaking wagons ferried old towns' healers and scribes, their trunks packed with salves and vellum, while Baratheon riders flanked the column in loose files, sun flashing from antler helms. Viriditas shadowed them high above, his broad wings barely stirring as he rode the summer thermals. Ghost Flame flew farther east, favoring solitude since Sandor's fall. Yet whenever dusk settled, he glided in to land near his emerald companion, the two dragons huddling like disparate moons over the camp's small fires. Sansa kept her own counsel on those dusks, seated on a boulder with quill and parchment balanced against her knee. She wrote to people who would never read the words, letters to her father, to Jon, to her mother, and let the truths she could not speak aloud bleed onto paper before consigning each sheet to the flames. The ashes rose among drifting sparks, scattering into the night breeze. Only then, soot on her fingers, did she join the circle of guards sharing oatcakes and salted lamb, listening more than she spoke, learning the cadence of their hopes and worries. They crossed the blue burn where it ran shallow, each rider guiding a healer's mule by the reins. The river smelled of algae and dying fish. Salt water had invaded the estuary, one of many wounds left by ironborn pillage. Seeing the sickly water drove Sansa's resolve sharper. 2 nights later, she dispatched riders north in pairs, bearing sealed instructions to every miller between the Blackwater and the Mander. Dig new wells off the main course, share designs for river-cleansing sluice gates provided by Hightower engineers, and mark all poisoned shallows with red-painted stakes. The decree's authority drew from Crown Seal and Direwolf's signature alike, yet in nearly every village the elders praised Lady Dragon first in their prayers. Davos chuckled dryly at the title. "Careful," he warned one eve, rolling a pebble between scarred fingers. "Names become cages. You would not wish to wake one day and find yourself more myth than woman." She pushed hair from sweaty brow. "Better myth with open granaries than memory with empty stomachs." He grunted approval, though worry etched deeper about his eyes. The long summer day, when they reached Bitterbridge, marked exactly 1 year since Sansa had watched Viriditas crack shell in Winterfell's crypts. She dismounted beneath the ruins of Mace Tyrell's old tourney field, now a patchwork of vegetables planted by refugee families, and walked among carrot rows until her guards lost sight in the greenery. Kneeling, she cupped a cluster of trembling leaves and breathed the scent of damp earth, proof that life persisted regardless of banners or ballads. When she rose, she found a barefoot boy of perhaps 7 studying her with solemn hazel eyes. Dirt traced his cheeks like war paint. A wooden direwolf dangled on a twine cord round his neck. "Did you make that?" she asked, pointing gently. He nodded once. "Papa said the wolf dragon lady keeps bad men away." Sansa crouched, so their eyes leveled. "Your father is wise," she said, and slipped a silver stag coin into his palm. "Buy seeds and plant more." The boy's fingers closed tight, as though she had given him a relic. When the dragons passed overhead moments later, he lifted the wooden charm high toward them, as if offering allegiance no parchment could match. Edamau. They met the royal host at Sow's Horn, where a summer pavilion stood hastily erected among blooming foxgloves. Stannis awaited inside, armor unpolished, face more gaunt than when she had left. He dismissed entourage with curt gestures, keeping only the shadow tower's maester to note troop tallies. Sansa crossed the threshold, felt the heat trapped by canvas, and thought of smithy fires forging unyielding steel. "This feud does not end," Stannis said without greeting. His voice rasped like stones grinding under tide. Greyjoy's surviving captains rode Squall north. Lannister coin paid their sails. He rubbed thumb against forehead as though scouring worry lines. "Euron stirs again. Ravens speak rumor of a black armored fleet from Pike. I need dragons at Dragonstone. Sansa angled her chin. They come. Ghostflame needs time yet to heal Mind's wound, but he follows Viriditas. She relayed supply progress, Veil Treaty, Hightower decrees. Stannis paced, iron-shod boots thumping. Good. Yet storms multiply faster than parchments. The Reach Lords remain fractious. Tyrell emissaries spread honeyed lies. Highgarden finds loyalty, but arms secretly. Them? Sansa considered. Then we must show Harvest's bounty, not threat of fire, if we would win them. Arrange a great market at Bitterbridge, invite every house, let them trade beneath Dragon's shadow, secure and watched. Stannis halted. Risky. They may plot. And we shall watch, she countered. But fear alone breeds corners where vipers nest. Light drives them out. Davos entered with a map case, glancing between them. Pardon, Majesties. He spread vellum, showing Lannisport environs. Scout Crows confirm Siga works outside Fair Isle, Lannister's staging yard for Second Fleet. If we break those masts before they float, Stannis tapped table. Dragons strike by night. He eyed Sansa. She inhaled. Fair Isle lay far west. Dragons could cross in 2 days if winds kind. Yet to leave the market unguarded. Viriditas alone could not split in twain. She weighed choice. Ghostflame's grief might turn righteous flame, perhaps best channeled against Lannister's fresh hulls. She nodded slowly. I take Ghostflame. Viriditas guards the market. Davos frowned. Can you ride him safely? Bond is fragile, she admitted. But he trusts Flame's purpose. They planned through Candlemelt hours, coordinating Waynwood archers positioned as hidden reserve along Fair Isle cliffs, Mander galleys to cut escape, covert sabotage by Onion Knights disguised as deckhands to sow confusion just before Dragonfire. By dawn, plans settled like mortar. Ghostflame met her at the makeshift eyrie outside Sow's Horn. Pale hide sluiced with dawn's lavender, eyes still clouded from morning yet alert. She approached with silent step, no sudden moves. He flared nostrils, releasing a sigh that shimmered frost in the warming air. She laid hand on scaled breast, feeling his ragged heartbeat. We burn only ships, she whispered, picturing Sandor's gnashing grin. No cities, no innocence. The dragon tilted head. After Heartbeat's pause, he knelt. She mounted, tightening new-stitched saddle straps. Viriditas watched from a boulder, wings tucked, as though granting reluctant blessing. They launched into crisp dawn, carving a trail across the autumn-browned crownlands. For hours only wind roared, punctuated by Ghostflame's rumbling huffs. At dusk they crossed the wending white knife. Fishermen below scattered nets and fell to knees. She glimpsed their reflections rippling, a pale star streaking after the sinking sun. On the second day clouds thickened, bruised purple. Lightning flickered within, echoing ghosts of thunder. Ghostflame rose above the anvil heads, surfacing into sky so clear it felt forged. Indigo bowl studded with spectral comet still haunting horizon. They rode silence until coastline unfurled ahead. Faircastle's stubby towers, and beyond them the harbor cradling skeletons of near-complete galleys, masts stark against orange furnace glow from forge kilns along shore. She signaled descent in wide spiral, staying high enough that deck patrols mistook him for Cloud Shadow. At a pointed cove Waynwood archers huddled in pine gloom. Their captain raised lamp thrice. Red, red, green. Saboteur teams already infiltrated shipyards. Sansa wheeled Ghostflame farther out to sea, waiting. A flare burst green from the central dry dock. Chaos erupted. Workmen shouted, scurrying shapes brandished crossbows. Then a second flare. Blue. Time. She urged Ghostflame into steep dive, cold air screaming over saddle. Flame roared from his throat, icy white, edged with violet. It struck the nearest half-built Drummond, flash freezing deckwater into brittle glass, then detonating timbers as trapped steam expanded. Exploding planks pinwheeled. Pitch cauldrons toppled, igniting second and third hulls. Harbormen scattered like startled gulls. Ballistae, half assembled, groaned but never fired. She guided each breath. Prow, mast cluster, resin stores, sailhouse. Wainwood arrows hissed down to pin fleeing torchbearers. Galleys moored in shallow slips lurched ablaze, cables snapping. Some captains cut anchor, hoping tide might save them. Ghost flames strafed from low altitude, scorching waterline until hull seams belched smoke, and the sea swallowed flaming ribs. After 20 passes, the harbor was furnace enough to light the night for leagues. Sansa drew beast higher, surveying in. Only Faircastle's stonekeep remained intact, its garrison sounding alarm horns, but lacking siege engines to touch the sky. She banked wide, keeping out of arrow range. Below, saboteurs waved green flag. Extraction complete. She angled Ghostflame inland toward Meeting Glade. The dragon's scales glowed with internal heat. Frost fire smoldering between plates. Wisps curled from nostrils. Only when they reached Silent Copse did she allow him to settle, talons biting loam. Wainwood archers emerged with Davos infiltrators, all accounted. The leader of the fire-setters, a lean woman with singed eyebrows, grinned. Lions will be swimming for years. Sansa clasped her wrist. Well struck. They buried casualties, 2 men scorched when Pitch Kettle exploded, and offered brief prayer. Return flight pushed against Stormfront. Rain pelted scales, hissing where it struck residual heat. Ghostflame's wingbeat slowed. Fatigue rippled through sinew still healing from ballista graze lines. Sansa sang softly, an old winter town lullaby, feeling vibrations travel from her chest into saddle leather into his spine. Gradually his cadence steadied. They reached Bitterbridge dawn of market day. Viriditas hovered above, corralling merchant balloons used to advertise stalls. Ghostflame landed at far end of meadow, folding wings with quiet grace that belied carnage wrought hours earlier. Sansa dismounted into swirl of cut hay scent and roasting spiced apples. Peasants sketched hurried bows. Children pointed, excited. She soothed Ghostflame's muzzle with damp cloth until steam subsided, then walked toward central aisle of tents. Under a vast awning of stitched barley sacks, nobles and smallfolk bartered side by side. Tyrell cousins inspecting northern furs, Karstark traders sampling arbor wine, Dothraki sellswards arguing price of piglets. The riot of color and dialect pulsed like living mosaic. Overhead, Baratheon banners fluttered equal with direwolf, and in every corner hung tokens of the dragon, woven fern shapes, green glass beads, chalk drawings by local urchins. Sansa paused to breathe it in. Commerce is healing. At the pavilion's heart, Stannis stood conversing with Lady Olenna's grandniece, a bright-eyed girl tasked with gauging soil deals. His stiff posture softened a fraction as Sansa approached, mud splattered yet unbroken. She inclined head. Fair Isle fleet burned. No losses among our own? A flicker of satisfaction flashed across his stern face. Good. Let the lion gnaw fish bones? He noticed her grime. You should change before council. She smiled faintly. The smell of smoke reminds traders of security. The Tyrell envoy smothered a laugh. Events unfolded, swift thereafter. 2 weeks seesawed on knife's edge between war and plenty. Grain convoys reached High Garden and Old Oak, diffusing Tyrell warmongers. In exchange, Rose road patrols received fresh horses and medic carts. A raven from the wall reported wildling tribes pressing east, fearing green-eyed frost wraiths. Bran counseled vigilance, but urged no mobilization yet. Sansa filed the omen beside 100 others. One humid twilight near Castlewood, as they camped amid cedar groves, she dreamed again of the loom. This time, threads snapped, releasing whip-cracks of black lightning that struck cities flaring crimson. She jerked awake into moonlit hush, heart flailing. On the horizon, the comet burned brighter, tail splintering like a fan. Fear pooled cold over her skin, but she steadied breath. Dreams guided. Dreams did not bind. She slipped past slumbering guards to where Viriditas lay, ribs rising slow. Ghostflame slumbered farther off, curled. She nestled against Viriditus's shoulder and traced a scale's edge, whispering promises aloud. That she would remember Sandor, feed every orphan she could, forge a peace sturdy enough to outlast her. The dragon's eye cracked open. Golden slit softening. He exhaled warm gust, scented of pine resin. Morning delivered urgent raven. A plague of quicksilver fever in Flea Bottom, already claiming 30. Panic threatened city order. Sansa pushed north hard, leaving Stannis to finalize trade charters. She rode Viriditus by dawn, covering miles and heartbeats. When King's Landing's walls shimmered into view, gray smoke rose above Candlemas District. At Dragon Pit, she barely paused to dismount, issuing orders to Master of Healers. Erect field tents outside Mud Gate, quarantine sufferers, boil water at all wells, station ghost fire braziers to sear pests. Old Town Sisters dispersed herbal poultices, while Citadel scribes catalogued symptoms. Over 48 hours Sansa moved like relentless tide, comforting families, ordering lime dust to cover waste pits, pressing fresh rags to fevered brows until her own garments stank of vinegar and sweat. She slept sitting against a cartwheel for snatches, but refused to abandon sight. By the 8th sunrise, infection curve bent downward. Maester Orwellen approached, breath wheezing through mask. "We believe the dragon brazier's heat and your boiled water mandates stemmed spread." He bowed low. "City owes you lives." Sansa dismissed with weary wave. Her eyes sought the rooftops where Viriditus perched sentinel, torch at dusk scaring off plague flies. That week of sickness crystallized her next decree. A public works program to rebuild King's Landing sewers, long clogged with rubble from Cersei's war. Funding would draw from tariffs on Myrish silk and Braavosi loans. Labor would come from idle sellswards promised bread and honest pay. Oversight entrusted to Guild Council half comprised of common-born foremen. Stannis balked at cost, but signed after witnessing funeral pyres along the Blackwater banks. Opposition brewed beneath the Red Keep nonetheless. Sir Giles Rosby, master of coin by tradition and ambition, conspired with Tyrell agents to divert funds, fearing common empowerment. An orphan runner tipped Arya's network. Sansa staged quiet audit. Ledgers revealed counterfeit signatures and double-paid tariffs. She gathered proofs, confronted Rosby in Council Hall full of guild representatives. When damning parchments fluttered onto the marble, Rosby stammered, then lunged for torch, seeking to burn evidence. Ghost flame. Summoned earlier as silent witness, thrust head through window arch. One growl snuffed rebellion. Rosby collapsed. Stannis stripped him of rank, sentencing him to manage sewer diggers. Hard labor beneath streets he plundered. The guild carpenters applauded. As summer edged toward harvest, sightings of the green comet grew frequent even by day, its pale tail now forking as though splitting fates. Maester Orwellen consulted star maps and predicted it would pass directly over Harrenhal come autumn equinox. Superstitions flourished. Some claimed dragons would multiply. Others feared doom. Sansa convened a symposium atop the sept of Baelor's Terrace. Healers, alchemists, priests of Earl lore, septons, maesters, to discuss celestial portents. She moderated carefully, insisting none claim monopoly on truth. The conclave concluded with joint statement. Stars guide, choices shape. The phrase found its way onto painted plaques in market squares, perhaps the first morsel of philosophy the city's cobblers and dyers owned collectively. Amid bustle, a raven from Casterly Rock arrived, bearing a single bolt of golden cloth, not threat, but invitation. Queen Dowager Cersei requested parley under peace banner at Storm's End ruins. Stannis scoffed. She seeks to slit throats beneath guest right. But Sansa understood the gesture's desperation. Lannister fleets broken, coffers strained, and rumors of Greyjoy betrayal at sea left Casterly Rock vulnerable. Yet even cornered lions kill. She proposed she attend with dragons overhead, and Stannis knights hidden among Storm's End crags. Preparation consumed weeks. She reread histories of past parley treacheries, from Maegor's butchery of faith captains to Blackfire false feasts. and drilled responses with Davos until each contingency felt sewn beneath her skin. On departure day, dawn light washed King's Road in pewter. She mounted Viriditas. Ghost Flame lifted beside, still pale, but vigor returning. They flew across Dornish marches where dust devils twisted like banners of unseen armies. Storm's End clung to Peninsula Cliff, ringed by surf pounding like war drums. Sansa circled once, noting Lannister crimson fluttering atop Central Keep. White banners of truce hung limp beneath. She signaled Viriditas to perch upon shattered spur west of Castle, a vantage-dominating courtyard. Ghost Flame landed opposite side, bracketing fortress in pincer of dragonfire. Cersei emerged, flanked by red cloaks. Gray streaks laced her hair, yet her green eyes burned serpentine bright. She wore black morning gown embroidered with golden cubs. Sansa descended steps alone. No armor, only plain wool riding dress, her strength the sky above. Waves sprayed mist. Gulls circled. "Lady Stark," Cersei purred, voice smooth as poison. "The wolf learns wings." Sansa inclined head. "A lesson your house once taught the realm. Power lies where it is taken." They paced along parapet where sea wind tore at fabrics. Cersei's opening demands held little subtlety. Recognition of Lannister dominion over Westerlands. Release of captured vessels. Installment of Tommen's younger cousin atop Riverlands as puppet. Sansa listened, expression stone. She countered. "Renounce claims beyond the Golden Tooth. Pay reparations to riverfolk. Send 100 craftsmen to assist sewer rebuild." Cersei laughed brittle. "You would have Lannisters grovel for bread." Negotiation unspooled. Sansa refusing baited barbs. At one turn, Cersei gestured skyward. "Two beasts obey your whistle? Dragons are not dogs. They feast upon their trainers when hunger grows." Sansa's gaze remained calm. "So we keep them fed with hope." "Hope?" The Queen sneered. "Hope is feast for fools." Rain began, fine needles stitching hair to cheeks. Thunderheads brewed offshore. When lexicon dried, Cersei reached for final gambit. She produced a rolled parchment bearing seal of High Septon. "The faith will declare your union with Stannis an abomination, heretical dragon worship, unless the beasts are slain or delivered unto Baelor's vaults." She extended the scroll like dagger. Sansa accepted, cracked seal, scanned. The text indeed threatened interdiction. Yet her pulse hardly quickened. She recognized Maester Coleman's cipher along margins, a message from Vale allies. High Septon compromised by Tyrell coin, his indictment hollow once proven. She folded scroll. "Tell your hirelings the faith now bakes bread in flea bottom paid by northern grain. Condemnation will starve orphans." She handed parchment back. "If you seek to protect your people, join trade. If pride forbids, you will watch them starve." Cersei's fists trembled. Lightning forked over sea, illuminating her face. A mask of fury streaked with rain tears. "I will see your dragons' skulls line the rock," she hissed. Sansa stepped close enough to feel the Queen's breath. "You will see the realm feed children." She turned in swirl of sodden cloak, ascending to Viriditas' talon. Ghost Flame roared overhead. Cersei backed, gown whipping. As dragons lifted, Stannis' hidden archers knocked arrows, but held, parley not broken. On the flight north, Sansa's thoughts churned like storm seas. Cersei would not bend, yet her power waned. Still, a desperate lion is unpredictable. Sansa resolved to fortify western marches and court disaffected Westerland houses with offers of grain and fair trade. Let Cersei stand on lonely rock while her bannermen found new future under Green Comet's promise. Autumn came sudden, crisp and sharp as new forged steel. Leaves along the King's Road blazed ochre. Fields spilled wheat like molten gold. In King's Landing, sewer reconstruction reached halfway mark, uncovering forgotten vaults crusted in wildfire crystals. Echoes of Aerys' madness. Alchemists in green masks supervised removal. watched by dragons perched along battlements, their presence discouraging any thought of sabotage. One evening, ghostly trumpets echoed across rooftops, Arya's firstborn ravens returning. They carried message from Bravos. Ships bearing sellswords under black dragon banners had left the free cities, rumored to serve a true Targaryen heir. Stannis scowled at council. "False pretender," he gritted. "We will not fight ghosts." But Sansa sensed threads converging. The comet, dragons, legend-fattened rumors. She called for intelligence network expansion. Watchers in Lismar, Pentos ports. Coin gifted to harbor masters. Coded messages through spice caravans. When winter's first breath brushed rooftops with frost, she walked the godswood again, kneeling before Hearttree grown a foot taller since last she prayed. She whispered of burdens heavy yet purposeful, of children fed, of treaties signed, of ghosts unresolved. Snowflakes drifted, catching in her hair like fading embers. In that hush she felt presence, not gods nor Bran's distant sight, but something fierce and quiet, perhaps her own courage mirrored back by red leaves. She rose to meet Davos at the courtyard where council awaited. They would draft next chapter. A realm where roads remained safe, where dragons soared not as tyrants but guardians, where a Stark who had endured cruelty now forged mercy into shield and spear alike. She adjusted wool collar, inhaled cold air. Far above, twin dragons coasted on winter thermals, emerald and pale fire glinting against low sun, sentinels of tomorrow's sky. And Sansa Stark stepped forward, quill and sword balanced within her heart, ready to weave the loom of fate once more, ready to guard every fraying thread until the tapestry shone whole beneath the strange green star. Aika. Pantai. Winter's scent ghosted southward long before snow, a dry crystalline note in the wind that caught at the back of the throat. In the early hours before dawn, Sansa stood on the outer ramparts of King's Landing and tasted it, watching her breath plume white against pre-morning charcoal skies. The city below slept fitfully, lanterns guttering in alleys where sewer trenches still yawned open, and the air carried the tang of lime and wet mortar. Somewhere inside the walls a baby wailed. Hungry or frightened. Somewhere farther off a drunken sailor barked half a shanty into the darkness. Yet the night felt poised, holding its breath, as though the whole of Westeros waited for a single decision to ring out and shatter the balance. She laid a gloved hand to the rough stone and closed her eyes. From distant towers she could sense, rather than hear, Viridita shifting atop the dragon pit's highest parapet, great wings rustling like stiff canvas. Ghost Flame roosted beside him, limbed pale silver by dying moonlight. They were uneasy tonight, tails twitching, necks craning northwest toward the King's Road, as if called by a summons audible only to creatures born of flame and moon. She whispered to them and thought, "Patience, guardians, dawn is soon." Yet the unease remained, tingling across her own nerves. Somewhere beyond the city walls riders galloped, raven wings beat, plots tightened, footsteps approached, soft, measured, and Davos' voice broke the hush. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "The wind carries omens. Hard to rest when the realm feels tilted." He joined her at the parapet, gray beard ruffled by the breeze. Tilting's what realms do when too many kings push on opposite sides. He produced a small clay flask, offered it. She declined. He sipped. "Ravens from the stepstones came after midnight," he said, lowering the flask. Euron's banners sighted again, bigger flotilla this time. Black sails with the red eye. He paused. And one ship, flying a three-headed dragon in gold thread. Sansa's stomach tightened. Did they see the colors clearly? Black on red background? Aye. Witness says the dragon had wings spread wide, tails interlocked. That matched the ancient banner of Maegor's reign. House Targaryen's symbol, unmarred by a Baratheon stag overlay. Rumor of claimants had rippled for weeks, but a brazen standard on Greyjoy decks meant more than whispers. She eyed the horizon where the first hint of pale gold bled. If Euron courts a pretender, He courts chaos. The Reach will panic. The Stormlands too. Davos shifted uncomfortably. And Dragonlord drunkards in every tavern will swear the throne's rightful rider has returned. You've given them bread and clean water. Still some hearts chase silver wings on black. She inhaled the cold, letting it burn clear through. Then we must show them steadier fire. She turned. Send word to Stannis at Bitterbridge. Ask him to dispatch his swiftest raven to Old Town's beacon tower. They're to light the jade lantern thrice at sunset if any dragon-shaped sails pass the arbor. And double the watch at Dragonstone. If another beast is smuggled from Essos, we need to know first. Davos nodded, already cataloging tasks. I'll have messages away before Suncrest. Anything else? Yes, summon Maester Orwellin and Lady Melora Hightower to the capital. Their star charts may decipher the comet's shift. If it bends south by midwinter, I want to know which port its omen aims at. Davos left with a respectful dip of head. Sansa lingered as dawn cooled from iron gray to pewter blue. Far below, bells of the great sept tolled the sext for morning prayer. Her breath steadied. The realm would not wait for doubts. She must act first and forge precedents. 3 days later, the market square outside Cobbler's Gate erupted in a riot that tested all her new reforms. A rumor spread that sewers would soon flood the artisan quarter, poisoning wells. Gutter priests seized on fear, declaring the dragon's presence distilled foul vapors beneath the city. A cart of barley tipped, grain spilling like gold dust. Hungry families surged, fists flailing. A gold cloak lost his footing, baton crushed beneath feet. Panic rolled outward. Sansa was in council when shouts reached the Red Keep. She swept from chamber, cloak snapping, and descended stairs 2 at a time. By the time she reached the market, 100 small folk faced a loose shield wall of Baratheon guards. Bricks clutched in calloused hands. She strode past soldiers, arms raised. Enough. Her voice cracked across the square, aided by acoustic bounce off shuttered stalls. Silence quivered. She chose no dais. She stood within brick-toss reach of the front line, gazing at them as neighbors rather than subjects. "Who speaks for your fear?" she asked. A woman with tear-stained cheeks stepped forward, clutching a sooty infant. "We hear the tunnels will burst," she said. Water tastes of metal. Sansa gestured to a guild steward, who hurried over with a rolled parchment. She unsealed it. 3 wells in this ward have been retested this week. Here are the maester marks, potable. The pipe you fear is being replaced, not blocked. She scanned their wary faces. "But I will drink with you." She walked to the nearest pump, worked the lever. Clear water gushed. She filled a wooden cup, lifted it high, then drank until it emptied. "If poison exists here, I share your risk." Murmurs sifted the crowd. A tanner wiped his nose. A boy lowered his brick. The tension eased enough for city watch medics to carry the fallen cloak away. Sansa promised 2 barrels of fresh grain to the quarter and posted a daily board of sewer updates, signed by guild leaders and maesters, so rumor could be checked by fact. The riot subsided without a sword drawn. Later that night, from her tower window, she watched Viriditas glide above city roofs with slow, majestic beats. And she thought, there is power in fire, but greater in trust. Shortly thereafter, Old Town's jade lantern flared thrice against the sunset. The signal was followed by a single raven message, carried by a bird, bearing crimson ribbons to indicate speed above stamina. 6 great ships, sails black, dragon sigil confirmed, anchored near Starfish Bay. No disembark yet, more masts on horizon. Council crisis convened under torch glow. Stannis had ridden north that morning, but left Sir Roland Storm as hand. Storm argued for immediate dragon sortie. Others counseled caution. Perhaps sails only borrowed to sow discord. Sansa listened and spoke. "We must see the pretender's face before we swing at shadows. I will go." Storm stiffened. "Too perilous. You are pillar of alliance." She met his gaze. If the pillar does not inspect threats, the roof collapses. Plan crystallized. Sansa would fly Ghostflame under cover of night. Stay above cloud until near Starfish Bay, then descend to spy. Viriditas would remain to guard city. Davos volunteered to accompany via narrow boat, but she refused. Quiet sky was stealth. Boat risk capture. She left 2 hours before moonrise, ghost flame raising only a small gust of ash as talons pushed from Red Keep's highest terrace. The city lights shrank into a flickering necklace around black neck of land, then vanished as clouds swallowed them. They reached coastline before dawn. Ghost flame hovered inside a storm cell, whirls of vapor churning around pale bulk. Through ragged eddies, Sansa glimpsed the bay below. A cluster of masts like skeletal fingers, lanterns winking gold. She counted 8 vessels, not 6, 2 larger than any Westerosi warship. Decks swarmed with figures in quilted black. Some carried long poles capped with curved blades. Dragon lances? She shivered. Atop the largest ship, a sigil banner snapped. 3-headed dragons stitched in gold on black, but with a red-painted eye superimposed over central head. Euron's mark fused with Targaryen myth. A horn sounded, low and booming. Figures on deck scattered. A dark shape rose from aft deck, an oblong crate hoisted upright by chains. Crew hammered wedges. Sansa's breath hitched. The crate split, its front panel falling away to reveal. A drake shape? No, a wooden mockery. A carved dragon head with throat pipe leading to barrels of wildfire. She recognized Myrish pump rigs designed to spew green flame mimicry. Not a living dragon, but a terror engine. Relief ward with new alarm. Wildfire-breathing barges could scorch fleets. Panicked small folk into believing dragons served Euron's pretender. She withdrew into cloud, mind racing. Destroying them now risked revealing her presence. Better to hijack their own fear. At first hint of light on horizon, she turned ghost flame inland, racing back. By mid-morning, she briefed council. Davos leaned over the map. If those ships sail north along coast, they could strike docks of Maidenpool or Duskendale before we muster. Sir Roland tapped parchment. Wildfire at sea. Remember Blackwater. Flames upon tides are near impossible to fight. Sansa proposed a decoy. Evacuate coastal hamlets under guise of harvest festival. Draw Greyjoy fleet toward prepared shallows, laced with scuttled hulk barriers. When they became trapped, dragons strike from above while Stormland galleys unleash catapult pots of river mud to smother any wildfire slick. Risky, but fewer civilian lives. Preparations consumed a fortnight. Mander masons sank linked iron chains between reef outcrops. Davos smuggler contacts carted barrels of thick, high clay mud. Storm's End carpenters sabotaged 3 retired drawmans, filling them with gravel and rigging-timed scuttles to block retreat. Meanwhile, Sansa rode Viriditas along coastal villages with bread wagons and musicians, selling the festival ruse. Children danced around bonfires. Mothers wept gratitude. Euron's fleet took bait on the first crisp night of first frost. Lantern beacons signaled along cliffs. Black sails entering Trap Pass. Sansa and both dragons launched from Dragonstone. Silhouettes swallowed by starless sky. Below, Stormland galleys masqueraded as grain flotilla until last moment, then veered to drive corsairs inward. Battle of Pyre Shallows, as bards later named it, unfolded in tableau of terror and brilliance. Wildfire pumps roared emerald torrents, but sticky clay bombs splashed across decks first. Smothering nozzles, ghost flame dove in. Frostfire meeting nascent green blaze, creating steam clouds that blinded gunners. Viriditas followed, his jade inferno slicing masts. When scuttled hulks rose to surface, chain-tethered like skeleton whales, Ironborn realized trap too late. Sails snapped, or splintered. Within an hour, 8 vessels burned or sank. Survivors floundered among flaming debris until Davos longboats hauled them under spear point. On shore, Sansa interrogated captains. None had seen a living dragon. All referred to the tyrant of the storm who promised dragonfire machines and a crown. The claimant apparently remained in exile, sending letters sealed with a sigil combining black dragon and bloodied eye. One captive shivered. "He speaks through mirrored glass, milady. Voice like cracking ice." She pressed for name. They only called him Aegon of the Deep. She dismissed captains to chain pens, intending further quiet questioning by Maester Orwelin's truth herbs. More important was the discovery below decks. Crates of scrolls copied by Esose scribes, treatises on dragon lore, diagrams of wildfire distillers. Among them, a half-burned parchment showing a map of Westeros overlaid with concentric circles, centered on King's Landing. At each circle's edge a dot bore Valyrian runes. She recognized Dragonstone, Harrenhal, Summerhall, and Winterfell. Gooseflesh pricked. She rolled the chart, sealed it for Bran's deciphering. Winterfell loomed in her mind for days. She wrote to Bran. Explain concentric energy lines. Do they tie to weirwoods or dragon lie lines? Urgent. The Raven returned at record speed. Bran's spidery script. All places of old power. Death of dragons. Birth of kings. Wildfire veins. Convergence draws comet. Guard home. He enclosed a thumb-sized weirwood chip carved with a spiral rune. She wore it on leather cord beneath collar. Fate tugged northward, but duties fettered her south. Sewer project neared final tunnel, under the hill of Rainey's, once home to dragon pit horrors. Builders requested Dragonflame to melt collapsed rubbles of ancient catacombs. Sansa supervised. Viriditas breathed controlled jets, amber tongues fusing stone into glassy archways. Yet during one burn, masons uncovered a hidden vault lined with black steel. Inside lay a skeletal clutch of 3 stone eggs, calcified, cracked, yet faintly warm. Pyromancers believed residual wildfire heat. Melora Hightower theorized latent draconic resonance awoken by comet. Sansa sealed vault under triple lock. If eggs hatched, city's fragile ecology would shift painfully. She penned message to Old Town's highest lorekeepers for immediate study. But until they arrived, she tasked 15 silent sisters to keep vigil. No Sellsword would tempt fate for coin, if faced with vows of the dead. City politics shifted again as news of Pyre Shallow's victory spread. Small folk hailed the dragons as defenders. Merchant guilds offered new coin to sewer endeavor. Septons preached that Mother's Mercy had chosen Lady Sansa as instrument. Yet not all rejoiced. Tyrell envoys grew sullen, seeing Reach merchant fleets outshone. Dornish spies rumored to petition Iron Bank for loans to advance their own independence. Cersei, silent since Storm's End, finally struck from shadows. One frost-slicked dawn, a dozen barrels of Myrish fire were discovered tucked beneath strangers' sept. Intended to ignite during high prayer with Sansa present. Only Arya's urchin weaver, snooping for rat holes, saw suspicious footprints, and alerted City Watch in time. Investigation traced the plot through a merchant guildmaster. Secret Lannister agent. Public trial followed swift. Sansa addressed the gathered thousands. No faith burns today. We build, we do not immolate. The traitor was sentenced to rebuild 3 orphan creches, stone by stone, under watch. Rather than death, mercy again as shield. Some lords grumbled at leniency. Stannis lifted brow but did not gainsay her. Over ale later Davos mused, "You give them stories to tell their children." She responded, "Fear is short memory. Gratitude can span generations." Enderal. As year's end approached, frost deepened, coating dragon pit tiles until they gleamed argent. Ghostflame tolerated cold poorly, huddling near braziers. Viriditas seemed invigorated, exhaling clouds of steam like a living forge. Stannis summoned council to plot winter provisioning. With rivers icing, overland convoys required sled caravans from White Harbor. Sansa drafted logistic grids. Way stations stocked with salt pork, hay for oxen, firewood caches. She appointed Mormont and Glover captains to rotate patrols along last 50 leagues. Then came the Raven bearing dire tidings. Winterfell under specter. Ravens refuse roost. Shades glimpsed in crypts. Bran urges return. It was signed by Maester Walken's apprentice. Sansa felt the cold deepen beyond weather. She presented note to Stannis. He frowned. North is strong, yet rumors in winter grow. She pressed the concentric map into his hand. Power lines converge on Winterfell. If something stirs there, we must face it. Nenaralin. He considered long. The realm cannot lose you. Nor you, she countered. But sometimes pillars must separate to hold wider roof. She proposed assembly. Stannis stay in capital to hold south. Viriditas remain as deterrent. Sansa ride Ghostflame to Winterfell with a small elite retinue. Davos, Lady Melora, and 30 direwolf guards to investigate and reassure Bannerman. Bran's rune would guide. He agreed reluctantly. The farewell before dawn was brief. Snow flurried, catching torchlight. Ghostflame crouched. Harness refitted with winter furs. Arya's orphans clustered handing parcels of dried fruit. Stannis lifted crown slightly. Almost salute. Sansa clasped Davos' wrist. Ready? He nodded, eyes bright under wool-capped Darcy. They mounted via rope ladder. Ghostflame rose, wings scattering snow like shattered glass. Viriditas roared from rampart and benediction. They followed King's Road invisible beneath snow, but Ghostflame's keen eyes traced its ghostly cut through forests powdered white. They paused in Derry lands where river met ice. There Davos eyed the horizon, remarking, "Strange hush. Even crows mute eye." Indeed, forests seemed to hold breath. 2 nights later, they reached Moat Cailin. Winter wolves howled at unseen shapes. Melora measured air with a brass rod etched in Valyrian glyphs. Needle quivered. Magnetic skew north. She murmured. Crossing the neck, pine boughs drooped under heavy snow. Caravan sleds creaked. On 4th dusk Flint's finger watchfire signaled. Winterfell's beacons, dark 3 nights. Unease spiraled. Ghostflame swept over last hearth before dawn. The castle looked deserted, save for smoke tendrils. They landed gingerly inside courtyard. No guards barred gate, yet doors were not broken. Inside Great Hall, they found hearth still warm, food half-eaten on trestles, chairs overturned, as if folk fled mid-supper. A single parchment pinned to Lord's high-back chair with a black iron nail read, "Phantoms below, wolves above. We seek safety at Deepwood." Signed Rickard Umber. Sansa swallowed. Something drives them out. They pressed on. Skirting shivering wood. At midday Ghostflame bucked, emitting plaintive moan. Ahead, Winterfell's towers pierced swirling snow, but the usual chimney plumes absent. White ravens circled, ominous sign. Sansa dismounted outside King's Road Arch. Gates stood ajar. No sentries. Snow lay ankle-deep inside courtyard. She called out. Only echo answered. Torch in hand, she led company toward Great Hall. Inside she found hearth cold, banners limp. Maester Walken's apprentice emerged from stairwell, face gaunt. "Lady Sansa, thank gods." His voice shook. "They're in the crypts." "Who?" "The people. And something else," he explained between shivers. 3 nights passed. Hearttree began weeping black sap. Children heard voices from crypt tunnels. Then shades rose, blue-lit eyes frost-trailing. White Walkers? No, he said. More like silhouettes of former Starks walking corridor muttering ancient tongue. Folk fled to outbuildings, some to Deepwood. Apprentice sealed crypt door with chain, but shapes still roam beneath. Sansa felt Bran's rune grow hot beneath cloak. She ordered warriors to secure perimeter, barred all doors. Then she lit lantern of weirwood oil Melora had mixed using sap and crushed juniper. She, Davos, Melora, and 2 spears descended toward crypts. Stone steps descended into stillness, broken only by drip of melting ice. Lantern light flickered across carved direwolf heads. At 3rd landing, frost film coated walls, though air felt warm. Rune at her neck pulsed faint green. She pressed on. At crypt gate the chain lace snapped, link ends crusted in rime. Beyond stretched corridor of tombs. Black sap streaked floor. A shape moved. Tall, gray-white gown reminiscent of Queen long dead. Caitlin? Heart lurched. But no. Face barely formed. Featureless. Eyes twin pinpricks of blue flame. It floated, not walked, trailing frost. Davos set stance. Melora murmured Valyrian words. Sansa stepped forward, rune raised. The wraith paused. She spoke softly. I am of the blood of Winterfell. Her breath plumed. Name your sorrow. A whisper answered. Not by sound but within mind. Broken oaths. Souls untended. Power stolen. She saw a flash of green wildfire, of dragon's roar, of comet tearing sky. She sensed old magic waking, clamoring for balance. Melora gasped. The lines. The deaths of dragons' unsealed doors. Sansa tightened grip. Then take from me what is due. She placed rune onto icy hand. Light flared emerald white. Wraiths' forms shuddered, fissured, then dissolved into drifting snow motes that melted before touching floor. Silence. Torch sputtered. Down corridor more shades stirred, but their eyes dimmed, forms unraveling. The black sap on floor receded into cracks. Cold lifted. A soft hush spread. Like exhale after fever breaks. Sansa's rune crumbled into ash that smelled of pine and blood orange. They emerged hours later into courtyard bathed in midday sun. Wind felt cleaner. Refugees lurking in haylofts ventured out. Tears sprang as they saw Lady Sansa alive. She embraced gray-haired Glover matron. No more ghosts, she promised. They reopened halls, relit hearths, cooked stew. Ghost flame landed inside outer yard. Snorting, but calm. Snow began to fall leisurely. Normal winter, not omen. Sansa thought of loom threads. One knot loosened. That night, sitting before rebuilt fire, Davos asked, "What was it?" She gazed into flames. Deaths need mourning. Too many restless bones. Too much power drawn without homage. Melora added softly, "When dragons rise again, old magics follow. Some benevolent, some not. Balance must be fed." Sansa nodded. "We will feed it with remembrance, not blood." She declared a festival of ancestral honor. Every holdfast to carve memory candles for their dead, to light them on longest night as pledge of gratitude. Such ritual, she hoped, would calm energies. Ravens carried decrees south. Enderander. In days that followed, Winterfell buzzed with renewal. Black sap ceased. Weirwood leaves brightened. Bran's ravens flew overhead in swirling patterns like runic sigils of thanks. Sansa walked battlements at dusk with Davos, surveying men repairing parapets. "North is ready for winter," he said. She responded, "And for spring that follows." She dispatched letters to Cersei, Tyrells and Dorne, inviting envoys to a peace moot at Harrenhal next spring, under Dragon Guard, to draft charter of mutual roads and famine relief. A gamble, yet she felt realms pulse shifting. One more thread waited. The comet. Astronomers predicted closest passage in 2 moons, arcing directly over Harrenhal ruins. Some called it Dragon's Eye, others Doom's Smile. Bran's latest message: comets fire seeds renewal, but can sear unshielded hearts. Gather under oaths. She pondered. Harrenhal had seen horror in flame. Perhaps there it could host hope. Before setting south again, she knelt in Godswood, pressed hand to heart tree. Soft wind answered in rustle. She whispered, "I will carry your stories south, so they may guide new routes." Rising, she felt lighter. The weight of realm yet huge. And now, the flight back to capital cut through stinging sleet. Ghost flames surged with new vigor, responding to her will as if their bond finally cemented. Loss transformed to trust. Upon arrival, King's Landing greeted them with lantern seas shaped like direwolves and stags entwined. Small folk cheering. Viriditas trumpeted greeting, wheeling with joy. Stannis met her atop Maegor's holdfast. Snowflakes dusted his pauldrons. North secure. She smiled. Ghosts laid to rest. He studied her, then nodded. Good. Because South stirs. He handed sealed scroll. Tyrol crest. Olenna's successor proposed limited alliance at Peace Moot, provided Dragonfire demo limited and trade concessions offered. A start. Together, they walked Rampart, where two dragons perched side by side, steam rising from nostrils into night, where the great green comet now flamed across zenith, brighter than decades past. It shone upon river, upon half-finished spires of new aqueducts, upon thousands of candles lit on rooftops for ancestral night just declared. The world below glimmered, woven of hopes and embers. Sansa breathed cold air tasting of ash, pine, salt, and something sweeter. Perhaps the dawn beyond winter's dark. She laced fingers behind back, feeling heartbeat steady. The loom still strained, but threads now glowed, tugged taut into patterns unseen yet vibrant. She would guard it, mend it, add color until tapestry wrapped every child of realm in warmth. No storm could tear. And overhead dragons watched, patient custodians of fire and frost, while Comet's tail etched a final oath across the heavens. Though old powers wake and new perils gather, the promise of flame tempered by mercy would guide Westeros into its uncertain but fiercely bright tomorrow. The New Year's first dawn broke like a blade of flaming jade, the comet's radiance refracting off low ice clouds and spilling strange green-gold hues across the Blackwater. From the ramparts of the Red Keep it looked as though a second sunrise burned behind the first, the sky shearing open along some unseen seam to reveal the molten heart of the world. Sansa watched in rapt silence beside Stannis and Davos, breath frosting in the air between them. Below, King's Landing was hushed, the city's perpetually clamorous mourning lulled into awe by the celestial spectacle. Even the gulls passed without screeching. When the last sickle curve of green melted into ordinary daylight, she exhaled. Every omen, she said softly, is a choice. We decide whether we answer in fear or in purpose. Stannis crossed his arms, cloak snapping in the river wind. Then we had best choose with haste. My outriders report gold banners moving again. Casterly Rock empties its hills of levies. Davos shifted uneasily. And Ironbank's Raven arrived. Braavos is selling a fleet to Highgarden. They'll want coin repaid in blood if need be. Sansa's mind turned over the difficult arithmetic of war. Troops, grain, dragons, faith, fear. She squared her shoulders. Then the peace moot must hold, or the realm will split along the cracks of every hungry stomach and wounded pride. And now, for moons, the council toiled, hammering delicate alliances with mortar of concessions and promises. Scribes drafted charters thicker than Maester Orwellan's herbal compendium. Messengers rode through blizzard and thaw, carrying tokens of good faith. Loaves of winter wheat, casks of arbor cider, rolls of northern wolf fur, coils of Dornish glass bead. Word spread along frozen roads that Harrenhal, the castle once synonymous with ruin, would host a parley of every great and lesser house willing to forge a new age. Many scoffed. Harrenhal devoured kings. Yet curiosity grew, and necessity. Winter wheat stores were low, seas thick with storms, and even the proudest lords felt the weight of their people's empty larders. Inside the Red Keep's map room, Sansa pushed red jasper stones across Westeros' carved surface, each stone a delegation agreed, a danger quelled, a lingering peril. Across from her Melora Hightower, placed tiny painted tiles along braided chalk lines that traced the energy pathways revealed by brand studies. "Hera," Melora murmured, tapping the juncture at Harrenhal. "All tides of power not. A moot in this crucible could anneal the metals, or explode them." Sansa nodded. "Then we must temper the heat." She ordered the ancient castle readied. Blackfish Tully took charge of defenses, garrisoning the outer wall with river spears now seasoned in fray skirmishes. Manderley engineers dredged a channel to float barges of grain directly into the lake beside Kingspire Tower, creating supplies for any winter-bound host. Silent sisters scrubbed away centuries of soot and blood from the audience hall. Smiths melted down jagged, cursed ironwork to forge plain braziers whose flames would be fed by sweetwood instead of bone. Outside the capital, dragons patrolled. Viriditas swept along coastlines, ghosting his shadow over merchant ships, and Greyjoy reavers alike, a living decree that piracy would be scorched. Ghost flames soared the King's Road, Frostfire plume marking the path for incoming envoys. Each village he passed lit lanterns, wolves painted upon the paper shades, signaling safe passage. The beasts became tether and shield both, symbols of dread to those plotting war, of wonder to the weary. Yet whispers trailed them. That ghost flame still mourned, that Viriditas' bond might fray should Sansa fall, that a third dragon egg pulsed beneath Dragon Pit vault, nearly warm enough to twitch. Sansa kept such rumors bottled. Truth itself was perilous. She spent cold nights beneath flickering lamplight mastering ledger scrolls, chasing every last kernel of grain through ledgers to ensure no famine would sabotage their fragile hope. And March winds arrived smelling of iron and thawed earth. The first delegations rode north. Banners of Talhart gray, Florent blue, Martell orange. Even the silver moon of House, Arryn snapping alongside Stark and Baratheon standards. They camped in staked circles around Harrenhal's outer bailey, as Sansa decreed. No soul house granted advantage of inner keep lodgings. Food wagons roamed from circle to circle, serving stews of river carp and turnips, bread flavored with Dornish lemon zest, pale ale brewed from northern oats. Let them break bread together before they broke faith, she thought. The afternoon Sansa arrived. The lake glimmered, half ice, half mirror. Her arrival was not upon Dragonback. Optics mattered. She rode a mottled direwolf gray mare named Ivy, cloaked in plain wool. Viriditas circled high but did not land. Behind her trotted Davos, Melora, Arya's urchin weaver promoted now to page, 40 mixed Stormwolf guards, and a single wagon hauling barrels of Wintertown mead to share at Moot's first supper. The throng parted as she passed. Small folk gawking, knights dipping lances. She acknowledged each with measured nod, yet inside her pulse hammered. This was the fulcrum. All else had been prelude. Within the audience hall, sunlight speared through half-mended cracks, dust motes swirling like snow. The dais held 3 plain chairs, one crowned with carved stag, one with direwolf, one left intentionally bare in respect of the faith, symbol that no house would sit above the gods this day. Stannis took stag seat. Sansa, the wolf. The bare chair remained sentinel. She rose first, voice carrying. We gather in the shadow of past ruin to forge future harvest. Speak now not for banners, but for bellies and hearths. And so each envoy rose. Sir Garth Tyrell, cheeks ruddy with cold, pledged surplus barley. Lord Harmon Dondarrion offered storm-cut cedar for shipmasts. Dornish Lady Nymor Martell promised saffron if tolls dropped on Bonway caravans. Even dour Lord Randall Tarley, grizzled and stiff, conceded patrols for bandit plague near the Mander, if grain wagons passed unmolested. Laws rippled. Stannis' stern face eased a fraction. It was working. On the Moot's second day, tensions flared. A Lannister cousin, Lady Muriel, rose with a parchment listing reparations demanded for destroyed fleets at Pyre Shallows. Murmurs hissed. Stannis slammed gauntlet. Davos whispered counsel. Temper steel with water. Sansa stood. Muriel Lannister speaks for losses. Let loss be weighed against threat. Without that battle, wildfire had gutted Maidenpool. We mourn sailors on all sides. I propose a rebuilding fund, gold levied from tariffs on Associ silk. Eyes flicked to Tyrell delegate, and half from grateful ports spared. The compromise spread burden across rival houses. Muriel's protest died on her lips as others nodded grim assent. That evening, fires crackled in Kingspire courtyard as cooks basted boars shot that morning. Sansa walked among clusters of knights exchanging tales, noting friendships stirring. A Mormont laughing beside a Hightower page, a Martell sharing chili powder with a Frey turncoat. She paused beneath Harrenhal's charred gate, where the comet now blazed overhead, haloed green. Bran's words echoed. Guard the loom. She felt warp threads tighten. In the hush, She sensed presence, a figure in dark cloak slipping between casks. Instinct pricked. She followed, hand on dagger. The stranger ducked into an unfinished gallery. Sansa entered, blade half drawn. Pale moon filtered through broken roof, illuminating a slight woman pressing finger to lips. Sansa froze. Arya ducked. Her sister's wolfish grin cut 10 years away. Hair braided back, eyes gleaming steel. Had to see if rumor was true, Arya whispered. You, Queen of Dragons. Sansa swallowed joy and fear. They embraced fiercely. Arya pulled back. I smelled plots. Cersei sells words in false colors among servants. They planned to poison the mead cask meant for closing toast. Sansa's stomach sank. Wintertown mead. How many? Half a dozen. I marked them. Sansa squeezed her sister's shoulder. Then let's unmask them. They devised swift plan. Mead cask switched for identical barrel of tinted water. Conspirators would seize chance to spike, then be caught by tasting. Arya melted into shadows to track. Sansa returned to feast. Calm mask donned. When servant rolled cask before dais at night's end, Sansa raised goblet high. A toast. To the hands that sow seed and those who guard field. Per tradition, servant poured first cup for host. Sansa gestured instead to Mirielle Lannister beside her. Mirielle, startled, accepted. Conspirators shifted uneasily. Sansa's eyes pinned a lean man at barrel spigot. Hair dyed sand, but lion ring on finger. He lowered gaze. Mirielle sipped, brow quirked. Water. Sansa smiled sweetly. Melting snow from Winterfell. Purer than any spirit. She flicked wrist. Soldiers seized, servants. Arrows drawn. Arya appeared with blades at 2 more throats. Gasps erupted. Under torchlight, poison vials clinked in hidden pockets. Plot exposed. Doubt burned away. Sansa spoke quietly. Even at peace table some choose daggers. The realm sees. Prisoners were led out for trial under joint jury of diverse houses. After, Stannis growled. Lannisters will deny sanction. Sansa nodded. They denied Cersei's last embassy too, yet choosing not to execute on the spot. She ordered conspirators shipped to Dragonstone's solitary cells. Justice visible, not vengeance. The comet reached zenith on the moot's final dawn. Ritual began before sunrise. Every delegate carried a single seed cupped in palm. Barley, lemon, winter rose, cactus fruit, symbols of each region's sustenance. They processed through Harrenhal's shattered sept, its roof long gone so the comet shone down like a spear of light. In the center courtyard, a ring of compost loam waited. One by one they planted seeds covering with soil and a breath of promise. Even Mirielle knelt, depositing a golden apple seed. When seeds lay buried, Sansa stepped forward holding a small iron lantern. Inside, Viriditas' flame flickered. A gentle ember had breathed into the vessel at her request. She knelt, touched lantern's mouth to the soil. A wisp of shimmering jade flame danced across the mound, not burning but warming. Steam rose. Sweet and earthy. May the realm sprout new life from shared earth. She said. Voices murmured amen in 7 tongues. Thunder rumbled, yet skies clear. Many glanced upward in fear of omen, but the sound rolled from east. Viriditas descended in lazy spiral, wings booming like distant drums, ghost flame gliding after. They lit just beyond wall, rumble echo turning to purr. Their silhouettes against comet froze the assembly in silent awe. Then slowly, one voice began to sing. A winter town planting song. Gentle, low. Another joined, a reach ballad braided in. Soon the courtyard brimmed with layered voices, chorus of cultures, a weaving of sound. Sansa closed eyes, letting it wash through. In that moment she felt the loom threads slacken, tension easing, pattern shining. Enderwell. 2 days later envoys signed the Pact of Harrenhal. A charter pledging annual granary levy shared across coasts. Free passage over Twins now regulated by elected River Toll Council. Outlawing wildfire in naval combat. Scholarship exchange between Citadel and Northern Weirwood keepers. And, most radical, a tri-crown system. Stannis recognized as High Protector, Sansa as Lady Regent of Trade and Restoration, and a vacant It was compromise of illusions and real power. Critics called it unwieldy, but most called it miracle. Rumor of charter spread on spring winds. At White Harbor, bells pealed. In Dorne, olives were pressed for a vintage named Green Comet Reserve. Even Bravos bankers renegotiated interest, sensing safer investments. Yet across seas, in shadowed room aboard a rocking vessel, a man in tattered black smirked beneath silver mask. Candlelight glinted off mirrored glass orb on table showing tiny flickering image of Harrenhal's courtyard, and the dragons. Aegon of the Deep traced the orb with nail, whispering, "Let them weave." A single pull unravels finest tapestry. He lifted parchment. A raven report. Egg beneath red keep nearly stirs. He tapped orb. Image shifted to dragon pit vault door, guards pacing. "Soon," he muttered. "One beast to tame, two to break." Ship groaned. Waves slapped hull like slow heart. Enderal. In King's Landing, Sansa resumed work with new vigor. Sewer ceilings finished. Fresh water gushed. Plague fears receded. Treasury still thin, but tariffs steady. She opened Fetters Square as grazing ground for milk goats, free to mothers. She commissioned traveling theater troupes to tour war-battered villages, performing histories that praised not single hero but communities. Scripts penned by Old Town scholars and Winter Town bards. Yet nights brought warning dreams. The loom, once glowing, now twitched. A single dark strand whirled across weft. Bran's raven arrived. Beware Egg song. If hatched in shadow, it will call to kindred, unbound by vow. She secured vault triple times, posted sisters, but heart gnawed. Ghostflame grew restless, pacing ramparts at dusk. Melora assessed, claiming he sensed sibling within shell and threat beyond. Sansa visited vault, lantern in hand, standing before stone-speckled egg. It radiated warmth like infant's brow. She laid fingertips. A pulse answered. She whispered lullaby Sandor once hummed off key. Heat steadied, but fear did not. Stannis advised destruction. Hammer it before hatching. Davos counseled wait. Perhaps new bond for another faithful rider. Sansa compromised. Move egg to Blackwater Isle. Tiny windswept rock fortified by Manderley engineers. There, under constant vigil, and away from crowded streets. It could hatch if fated, but not under assassin's hand. Transport preparations secret, yet spies seep. One storm-lashed night, as barge ferried crate across inky water, shadow ships struck. Lean hulls black as void, silent sails. Barrage of iron hooks bit barge rails. Ghostly crew, faces veiled, boarded. Guards fought valiantly, but were few. Lantern spilled. Wildfire arrow hissed overhead, igniting mast. Chaos. Patrolling above, Viriditas wheeled. Baritone roar, ripping clouds. Ghost flame launched from tower. Frostfire streak. Splitting rain. In flurry of talons and flame. Shadow ships splintered like driftwood. Yet amid carnage, a single masked diver slipped into water clutching object the size of babe. Egg stolen. Sansa, watching from battlements, shouted futile. Soldiers loosed quarrels. Missing target swallowed by churning black. Morning search found only shattered helm, etched with red eye. Fury weighed heavy. Stannis ordered ports sealed, every outgoing ship inspected. But sea-wide. Sansa retreated to Solar, fists shaking. Threads unravel, she whispered. Bran's raven on perch croaked as if in answer. She penned urgent letters to Old Town, Bravos Karth. Track any sale of dragonling commodities. Arya slipped away, vowing to hunt thief through every port. Weeks passed with no sign. Meanwhile, Lannister forces probed Riverlands again. Without egg thieves' leverage yet revealed. realms stretched thin. Under moonless sky, Viriditas began thrashing in sleep, keening low. Melora feared sympathetic bond. Hatchling about to crack far away. Sansa clenched jaw. Could not chase phantom, must shore walls. Then dispatch arrived via tipped arrow through council window. Bolt bearing black scrap of sailcloth, charred at edge, smelling of myrrh. Note inked in silver. Bring dragons to Shipbreaker Bay on eve of Storm's Eye, alone, or the Wyrmling screams. Signed with blood-stamped sigil. Three-headed dragon crowned by red eye. Shipbreaker Bay, coast near Storm's End, haunt of tempests. Trap, Stannis pronounced. But we cannot ignore. Sansa agreed. She would go with both adult dragons, but not alone. Davos would sail covertly in fury, archers hidden along cliff. Melora with jar of powdered obsidian, said to disrupt sorcery. Stannis to remain capital, if coup aimed there. Eve of Storm's Eye brought gales. Comet loomed monstrous, tail split like trident. Viriditas and Ghost Flame fought headwinds toward jagged coastline, where lightning strobed a half-sunken tower, nicknamed the Drowned Lantern. On ledge below, braziers flared green, illuminating lone figure in black armor, etched with Valyrian glyphs. He held swaddled bundle, the egg? No, a hatchling. Black scales glistening, wings damp. Its shrill cry pierced storm. Sansa hovered astride Viriditas, shouting above wind. Let the babe live. Speak your terms. The armored man removed mask, pale visage. One eye missing, socket filled with oblong ruby glinting red. Urine? Or another? He laughed, voice echoing unnatural. Terms, bow, and 3 dragons serve true king beyond depths. He raised dagger to hatchling's throat. Blade crackled blue. Sansa's heart seized. Ghost Flame shrieked, diving but hesitated at dagger's eerie glow. Below, unseen by foe, Fury's ballista crew took aim, waiting cue. Melora on deck whispered spell, obsidian powder swirling. Sansa calculated, a single heartbeat. She nudged Viriditas into dive, wings folded, arrowing faster than sound. She screamed ancient high Valyrian word, Bran sent, meaning breath of roots. Dragons responded. Ghost Flame exhaled cone of frostfire above ledge, steam plume blinding man. Ballista bolt whistled, tip coated in black obsidian mix, striking dagger hand. Blade shattered with burst of ice shards. Hatchling tumbled free. Screeching, Sansa extended gauntleted arm. Viriditas swept under, catching tiny beast against her breast. She cradled it, scales warm against armor. Masked man roared, clutching bleeding stump that seeped black smoke. Lightning forked, silhouetting his unnatural frame. Spine's ridge along back, twisted by dark alchemy. He bellowed curse in tongue older than Valyria, then hurled himself into churning sea where whirlpool swallowed. Storm subsided, as though his presence fueled it. Sansa turned skyward, tear-soaked, clutching hatchling whose eyes swirled pale violet. Little one, no more screams, she whispered. Ghost Flame and Viriditas crooned. They flew to Fury's deck where Davos' crew cheered ragged relief. The hatchling shivered. Melora wrapped in lamb's wool, examined, healthy female, black and amethyst. And return to capital was triumphant yet fraught. Small folk erupted in wonder at third dragon. Maesters fretted over food. Lords weighed balance. Sansa named hatchling Nemerix, after warrior queen who crossed seas. She decreed a nursery area on Dragonstone. Remote, secure. Viriditas allowed Nemerix to curl beneath wing. Ghost Flame guarded cave mouth. In council, Stannis conceded threat averted but new complexities born. 3 dragons meant 3 riders. Who? Sansa suggested a trial of worth, open to any proven loyal with dragon sense, chosen by the creatures themselves. Some balked, but tales of old dragon seeds spoke of humble men bonding beasts. Stannis relented. Cross-realm, dreamers stirred. A smith's daughter in Fair Isle woke tasting ash and roses. An orphan from Duskendale felt skin prickle when comets shown on scales had hammered into toy. Word spread. The dragon call. And in Tau. Spring, equinox blossomed. In Red Keep's reconstructed dragon court, candidates gathered. Nobles, small folk. Even a silent sister who removed veil to reveal burn scars. Nymerix watched from perch, eyes luminous. One by one they approached. Speaking soft Valyrian. Offering tokens. Most she ignored. A few she sniffed, nudged away harmlessly. Hours passed. Nervous murmur rose. Then the smith's daughter stepped forward, soot smearing cheeks. She knelt, laid wrought iron rose at Nymeric's talons. Hatchling chirruped, puffing smoke. Girl smiled, unafraid. Nymerix crept closer, nudged her shoulder, climbed onto lap. Gasps echoed. The beast had chosen. Sansa's heart soared. The loom's pattern added vibrant thread of fate unplanned. Girl gave name. Mara Rivers, bastard of no renown. Stannis frowned at illegitimacy. Sansa spoke first. Bloodline means less than courage. Council murmured assent. Mara sworn as Dragonseed Knight in training under Melora's tutelage. Nymerix followed her like loyal hound, albeit one that belched sparks. And now, seasons turned. Planting charter bore fruit. Granaries brimmed. Roads patrolled. Sept bells told births not deaths. Lannisters, thwarted in covert wars, turned inward to rebuild mines. Tyrells sold surplus grain south at fair price. Dornish caravans flowed boneway seeds and spices. Ironborn raids dwindled under dragon patrol. But across the narrow sea, ships gathered beneath black and red banners, and whispers of Aegon, of the deep fused with fractured Targaryen cells. Yet now Westeros carried shield of unity. Dragons bonded to compassion. Lords sworn to common oath. Small folk armed with hope. One starlit night, Sansa walked King's Landing's rebuilt promenade above Sewer River, now running clear. Lanterns reflected between arches. Children laughed, chasing fireflies. She paused atop stone parapet, looking toward north where Winterfell's star glimmered. Footsteps approached. Arya, returning from months-long hunt. Face wind-burned, eyes alight. Eye-man slipped into deep sea. But his cult fractures. I sewed knives of doubt. They clasped arms. Above them Viridita streaked across comet-lit sky. Ghost flame close. Nymerix trailing clumsy loops with Mara laughing astride. Triad of flame, frost and shadow danced through constellations. Sansa felt tears prick. Not sorrow but fierce grace. We have done much, Arya said quietly. Sansa nodded. Yet Loon turned still. Well, Arya smirked. Good that we spin better than spiders. They laughed, sound carrying over river. Far off, the comet's tail faded from venomous green to gentle aurora. Promise of balance struck. It would depart soon, but its fire had sown seeds. Some still buried, others already sprouting. Sansa touched hand to chest, feeling rune scar faint on skin where Bran's carving once lay, now absorbed. She whispered to the night. We guard, we grow. Down the promenade lights flickered on banners bearing stag, wolf, rose, spear, kraken shackled in ivy. Diverse yet entwined. Wind rustled them in shared rhythm, like pages turning in colossal book of realms, next chapter. And so Westeros entered the era of the woven fire, an age not devoid of shadow, but tempered by the steady hands of a woman who once learned to sing through fear, a king who forged duty into shield, a sister who danced with knives, and dragons who chose hearts not heritage. Their tale, still unwinding, would carry through centuries in songs that began under Comet's eerie light and blossomed into dawning radiance, where every seed planted in the dark soil of Harrenhal's haunted yard pushed green shoots toward a sky forever changed by the pattern of dragons, and the courage of a Stark who rode them into hope.